Okay, thank you. Well, I will officially open this meeting at 4:37?
32.
32. Okay, 4:32. Welcome everybody to our ordinary meeting for the 24th of July 2024. I'm now like to ask Councillor Hewson if he would make the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet on today. I humbly pay my respects to the people of the Wiradjuri and Ngunnawal nations, the past, present and emerging elders. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a bit of housekeeping. If you are asked to evacuate, the emergency procedure is to exit via the door leading out of the building directly outside the council chambers and proceed to the footpath opposite the council chambers and await further instructions. Live streaming, recording and publishing of council meetings. This council meeting is being streamed live, recorded and published in accordance with council's live streaming council meetings policy. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live streaming and recording. The chair and or the general manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their action result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and comments. Now, we have a public forum this afternoon and we have 4 speakers in the public forum. And I'll ask the speakers up as they are in the paper. So the first one is 12.4, request from BOOROWA GALONG Rail Trail Incorporated. Mr. Paul Young, I presume, or I have been told, has COVID. So, Mr. Jim Ryan. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we can't hear anything online.
We're just getting the Minute Secretary to turn the microphone on. Councillor Dodd, you could hear me? Yes. You.
Paul phoned me to say he's been diagnosed with COVID and asked me to take over giving the presentation. At the committee general meeting earlier this month, Paul and I changed positions. Paul is now the president of the Rail Trail Committee. I'm the vice president. The BOOROWA GALONG Rail Trail Committee have submitted a request to this meeting for council to enter into discussions with Transport for New South Wales to progress the development of the BOOROWA GALONG Rail Trail. At the present moment, there are federal government grants available through the Regional Precincts and Partnership Program for amounts between 5 and 50 million, and they'll meet up to 100% of the project cost. But to be able to apply for the grants, we have to show that we have the authority to use the land, and that requires council to make an application to Transport for New South Wales for a lease. But Transport for New South Wales won't approve that lease until the funding's available. But they will issue a letter that would enable us to apply to the Regional Precincts and Partnership Program for the money to construct the rail trail. But there is be no obligation on council until the funding is approved. If the funding isn't approved, everything lapses. If the funding is approved, and by that stage it'll be the new council who'll need to make the decision as to whether they wish to proceed. Throughout, there's been concern about the operation and maintenance costs. A few things have contributed to that. There were some errors in the feasibility study that didn't apply to projects in New South Wales, in particular the fencing. Under the Divided Fencing Act 1991, the adjoining landholders are responsible for the maintenance and any replacement of the fencing. Technically, they're also responsible for the erection of the fencing, but we've included the cost of the fencing as part of the project budget, which we believe is a reasonable approach, and we specified quite a high-quality fence. There's also been concern about the costs incurred by the Tumbarumba to Rosewood Rail Trail. These have largely resulted from two things. They fenced a 7-metre width on embankments. They fenced over the top of the embankments, and cattle climbing up on the slopes have caused considerable damage and required quite expensive repairs. And apparently in some of the cuttings there's very poor drainage, so that the rail trail itself has become saturated and the surface is broken up. We believe that the cost we have at the present moment of $65,000 is realistic, and the decision has been made, while there's a number of bridges along the rail trail, we will either replace or bypass all the bridges with new bridges. The steel for the bridges has a design life of 100 years.
1 minute left.
And the concrete deck, 50 years. So there will in fact be very little need for provision for amortisation. The other thing that I keep looking at, the transport study for this area, covering 9 shires, predicted an average growth of 20% in the population between 2021 and 2041. There was only one local government area predicted to have a decline, and that's Hilltops. And the one area that keeps being identified as the greatest potential for growth is tourism. The rail trail will bring tourists, especially if we bring in additional features like sculpture trails and things like that. I ask you to vote favourably for this meeting, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just another
Next
question.
up.
Another question, please.
Oh, Yes. Becky, come.
Are you aware of any of the landowners that are not in favour of this rail trail going on their land?
Yes. When the consultants were down here doing the rail trail transport plan, we made an offer for the consultants to go out for one-on-one meetings with landholders. Susan Corcoran Jr. organised a number of people protesting, saying they wished to have a public meeting, which we held in BOOROWA. At the meeting, there were 23 people attended. There were 5 people from 3 families spoke very strongly against the rail trail. Susan Corcoran, Wally Merriman, and
That's
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ingham. We don't need names.
So, yes, there are people opposed to it. We have also had adjoining landholders contribute quite substantial amounts of money toward the development plan. So, and again, going back to Tumbarumba Rosewood, the person who was the strongest critic of the rail trail is now a frequent user of it.
Thank you.
As I came here today, I got a phone call from a lady, and there were
Councillor Piper.
seven.
Councillor Piper. We'll talk about that later. Okay. You've got the answer from Mr. Ryan. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. Next up today, Mrs. Fiona Douglas, who's talking against the motion, item 1210, subdivision 8 lots into 7 lots on a 130 Allendale Road, Young. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, councillors, council staff. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on the proposed subdivision of 130 Allendale Road in Young. After consultation with Hilltops Planning Group, it was discussed that the subdivision proposal of 130 Allendale Road and Allendale Road upgrades were 2 separate issues. One was a planning matter, the other was an infrastructure matter, and the 2 were not related, and the road was not to be included or taken into consideration with the approval of the 7-lot subdivision. If these 2 items are not joined, why were measures taken to review traffic flow? Why was money asked to contribute towards the road upgrade? Why mention traffic upgrades in the development application? And why mention maintenance work that is proposed? These planned upgrades have no time frame or outline of what maintenance is to occur. In some areas, Allendale Road, there is only 1 car that can pass and there are major blind spots. I don't see how these are 2 separate matters and believe they must be considered as one if this development application is to be approved. I have spoken with Alison Treadwick, Biodiversity, Conservation, Science and Regional Development. She explained that some councils will separate a development such as this, as the road access doesn't need to come under the development application. It reduces the area that flora and fauna and biodiversity study areas. While she explained that this can be done, it is not best practice and thought Hilltops Shire was above this, as she has worked with them in the past and has currently held them in high regard. I would like to highlight RU4 is a primary production of small lots. The objective of this zone is to provide sustainable primary industries, to encourage and promote diversity and employment opportunities in relation to primary industry enterprises. In the development, it states that sections of woodland and rocky outcrops are to be protected because of the threatened species identified. This was achieved by moving the housing envelopes and accessed driveways. As the blocks are zoned RU4 with a minimum of 2 hectares, I would believe that the block size in the subdivisions would be too small to fit within the objective of an RU4 zoning, considering that some blocks have significant sections unusable, making the usability of the lots less than 2 hectares and as such do not fit within the RU4 zoning criteria. I have been advised by council staff that they are legally obligated to approve this development, and if not, they could be liable and taken to court. I would argue that council would be liable when an accident happens due to the increased traffic of a subdivision they have approved on a road that is not suitable and has been brought to council and councillors' attention on numerous occasions, not just by myself, but other residents along Allendale Road. It has also been highlighted in council documentation that Allendale Road needs significant repairs, and this was before doubling the traffic on the road. I am unsure how a development of this size can be approved without suitable access first being put into place. As mentioned, I do not want to stop the subdivision as a whole, but I do see that a 7-lot subdivision is not suitable for this area, regardless of the zoning. But would prefer a less intense development consisting of the existing 3 lots would be better suited. I'm also unsure why Hilltops ratepayers are required to fit the bill to upgrade roads to accommodate subdivisions. I'd like to bring attention as well that 2 of the proposed driveways of this subdivision block my existing property access. This has not been addressed, and I've received no correspondence regarding this matter, which has been brought to council's attention in person and by written communication. Thank you for listening to my points today, and I hope that you see that this subdivision is not suitable as it stands as 7 lots. Whilst documentation may have been supplied that ticks all the boxes, I would argue that it does not support the reality of the impact and the implications that this subdivision has on the environment and the existing landholders that reside in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Craig Filmer, and you'll be speaking, or you are speaking against the motion item 1211, modification to consent 1 KARABAH Avenue Young, and then 1213. Do you want, we'll deal with one first and then the next?
Yep.
1213, which is review of DA 2023, dwelling house at 902 Henry Lawson Way Young. So first of all, the 1211. Thanks, Mr. Filmer.
Madam Mayor, councillors and senior staff, I represent Mr. and Mrs. Chris Williams on the 1 KARABAH Avenue modification request with regards to footpath. What a very big disappointment this assessment is. At no point has our original letter of modification been included, so you can see the context of our original request. From what you have in front of you, you would be none the wiser that my client has offered to do a footpath in front of the new section of work, in the spirit of the policy. From what you have in front of you, staff have refuted one of the points out of hand without even appearing to conduct a site inspection to see limited chance on the west side of construction of a footpath on the west side of Hill Street due to slope, raised manholes, inconsistent driveways and the like. All you have is a desktop policy analysis, which in its own right makes incorrect statements about consistent application, makes no effort to examine past pedestrian access mobility plans by Young Shire Council, or in any way applies any form of logic to evaluate the request. I make 3 points. Point 1, the owner has put in place a new dwelling on the back of the allotment, which has a 50-year-old existing house. He has willingly offered to comply with the footpath policy work in front of the new building, despite its logic to do so being questionable. As the remaining frontage of the lot at KARABAH and Hill Street will not link to demonstrated planning for a public network, they seek variance by way of application of the concept of reasonableness. The existing house did not need a footpath, nor will it benefit from a footpath, and even more specifically, no footpath on their side of Hill Street was ever planned by council, nor is physically possible in places. The west side of Hill Street between Pineview Circuit and KARABAH Crescent has some of the most undulating, steep and infrastructure-littered footpath in town. The last Young Shire Council PAMP identified the east side of Hill Street as being the more hospitable side, and as a resident in that area, where everybody walks. A site inspection would confirm all of this, which has put the submission, yet it has been refuted as not being supported by fact. Why was the site inspection to verify same not carried out? I'm none the wiser. It's self-evident when you walk the footpath that you can't or nobody would walk without twisting an ankle on that side. Likewise, why would you ask for a footpath in front of a 50-year-old house? It was not built for the policy. It did not need a footpath before the DA, and per the owner's request not being seen by full council, just the frontage of the new work would be logical and make sense. Point number 2, the report states that council has consistently applied the development control. I would take this to task, and with a quick application of thought can come up with numerous examples where council has either not conditioned or not resolved compliance. I took a half-hour drive around town the other day, and the non-enforcement or non-application of footpaths were evident at 8 Hayden Place, 10 Hayden Place, 5-7 Capel Street, 7 Myra Street, 12 Mackenzie Street, 91 Blackett Avenue, 57 Fontenoy Street, 20 Orchard Street, 33 Jordan Place on the corner, 68 and 70 Jordan Place on the corner, 60 Nasmith Street, 21 Berthong Street, 10 Edward Street, 26 Berthong Street, 10 Edward Street, I've said, 8 Clody Street, 11 Clody Street, 10 Petticoat Lane, 115 Bonnelong Street, and I didn't go to every street in town. So council has consistently applied this principle? I think not. Point 3, an undesired precedent. I've in 30 minutes found 19 plus examples of unit or duplex developments where there has been either no condition or no enforcement. How can a logical analysis of this matter set an undesirable precedent when the background is woefully inconsistent application? If only the staff were aware of their surroundings and took notice of developments as they occur. Are town planners accompanying building inspectors on final inspections of bigger developments as they used to in my time? I don't think so. No precedent can be set when no benchmark has been uniformly enforced. In summary, my client seeks to provide a footpath to the frontage of the newly built dwelling. They seek concession from footpath around the 50-year-old dwelling. And can council please apply some logic?
We've just been looking at the regulations here.
You only have 1 minute left for all items you wish to speak on.
That was my fault.
You do not have 10 minutes under...
There are 2 items listed.
Through you, Madam Mayor, 4.5, a person may apply to speak on no more than 3 items of business at the agenda of a council meeting. And then under 4.13, each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to address the council. This time is to be strictly enforced by the chairperson.
I move the council extend the time available.
I'm happy to second that, Councillor Flannery.
As chair,
Finish for that item.
Strictly enforce, but I feel it was my mistake. So on this occasion, Mr. Filmer, I'm going to rule that you can speak on the second as well. Thank you.
So I'm permitted to continue?
Yes, you may.
Item 12.13, I represent the McLaughlin family on 902 Henry Lawson Way. Dear councillors and senior staff, we're here again on the same matter. Again, and why? The council resolution as exists and proposed is wrong to the extent that this would be the worst planning decision I've witnessed in 27 and a half years serving this community. Whilst we have lost reams of paper, the issue is simply to be debated on 3 main points. Point 1, it was approved in February, merely needing conditions attached before being deferred to the March 24 meeting and then unfairly reviewed and refused. Point 2, it defeats the objective required to be addressed, yet is continually paid lip service by staff and not accepted. And point 3, the land is lesser agricultural worth than the rest of the farm, yet staff are apparently more qualified to evaluate the agricultural use or worth rather than an agronomist or agricultural scientist. On point 1, I seek that anyone who is curious take a look at the video of the February 24 meeting. It will form the crux of any due diligence appeal to the Land Environment Court the owner may choose to make after the final outcome on this matter. The DA was approved, merely awaiting conditions to be attached that the staff had not brought to the meeting. Good practice dictates that if recommending refusal, contrary conditions of approval be kept in file in case the matter goes the other way. Staff and contractor had side conversations with me after the meeting conceding that my client had got that matter up contrary to the reco. It was reported again in March, yet somehow with great amazement, it was taken to report it for full reconsideration. To our utter shock, the chance to use 2 councillors being ill and unavailable to swing the numbers on this matter and get it refused. The way in which this has progressed without rescission, contrary recommendations and resolutions, leaves heaps of fodder for untoward and actions unbecoming at Land Environment Court appeal. On point 2, and in terms of merit, the only objective required to be satisfied in this case is to minimise unplanned rural residential development. We have put in both a word format and graphical format that 8 adjoining or adjacent properties are considerably less than half the zone minimum. The 2 properties across Powderley's Lane are occupied on lots half the proponent's size lot. The other adjacent on Powderley's is undersized and occupied, being at or about the same size as the subject lot. At no stage do staff acknowledge these in buffer considerations or reverse onus on those properties. Across Henry Lawson Way is a 5-lot subdivision at considerably half the minimum lot size, carried out a few years ago by someone known to all councillors. 4 of these have houses and they average 10 hectares. The other adjacent house, and last to be completed, was a Section 4.6 concession by this very council applied for by my company to approximately 11 hectares. In summary, how is it possible to minimise unplanned rural residential development when the land in question is surrounded on almost 3 sides by rural residential development, including precedents council itself has set? 8 houses exist on undersized land immediately adjacent and the farm owner's homestead on the other. At previous council meetings, debate has included statements on protecting the LEP. This LEP has not included any work on RU1 and RU4 lot sizes of 1, 2, 4, 10, 24 hectare land. Objections and submissions on these were refuted and deferred to a rural land study still yet to happen. It will be in the next term of council that they look at these strategic planning matters. 6 houses exist adjacent by prior planning instrument, 1 exists by special variation by this council, and 1 dwelling right still exists. 2 half the size of this lot are right beside it. How is it sensible to not permit the worst land on the farm to do exactly what all the neighbours are doing on this orphan block behind the homestead? This makes for great merit appeal to the Land Environment Court, as well as the due diligence appeal from point 1.
1 minute left. Thanks.
I'm almost done. On point 3, a qualified agronomist has stated what a travesty it would be to see anywhere else on farm other than this allotment, which has sloped rocks and wet drained areas for excision. How does a town planner sitting at a desk get to make a call contrary to an agricultural scientist? The allotment has had some ability and rare good years and a considerable deficit to the remainder of the farm to do a feed crop. It has the ability to adjust horses or some beef if supplementarily fed. Is it not wise to have some agricultural ability for an excised lot? The farmer's daughter is seeking this land as intergenerational transfer without causing mass disruption to the rest of the farm. It's on the blind side of the house from the farm. It has some but limited potential as it weighs down the main farm presently. It is surrounded by 8 dwellings on smaller allotments, especially 2 beside the lot that are half the size. Councillor has asked.
Your time is up. Thanks, Mr. Filmer.
Thank you.
Question for the Speaker, if I may.
Councillor Ingram.
A couple of questions, actually. In your presentation, you made reference to defeating an LEP objective, and that was one of the key principle in the debate. For those that aren't up with that planning jargon, could you please explain in plain English just what that means for everyone?
Thank you, Councillor. LEPs on rural land are constructed in a certain way under clause 4.2a as to how they can gain a dwelling entitlement. The objective of the zone, which clause 4.6, the reason you're here, us to amend or vary, is minimising unplanned rural residential development. If everything's distilled down, that's the one matter that actually is the whole test of this debate, minimising unplanned rural residential subdivision.
Thank you. And so the second part of the question is, what are the owner's options if this matter isn't successful, and would that mean that he'd lose more productive farmland from the lot?
On my prior 2 speeches to council, and it was dismissed by the director at the time, the owner is going to do this subdivision one way or the other. If he has to do it of viable farming land, it's a travesty on the farm. Basically, he has to take away the better crop land and keep the lesser quality land, which is this allotment.
Thank you for that. As you know, I wasn't present the last 2 meetings.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ingham. Thank you, Mr. Fulmer. We'll move on and work through this, and then we'll work to move the motions up so that in the gallery you don't have to sit through the whole of the meeting. But first of all, I'll ask Councillor Foreman if she would make the statement of ethical obligations.
Councillors are reminded that they will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of the people of Hilltops local government area and the Hilltops Council, and that they will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in them under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of their ability and judgment as per their oath or affirmation of office made under section 233A of the Local Government Act 1993.
Thank you, Councillor. The next is attendance, and Mr General Manager, we have some requests.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've had the appropriate requests from Councillor Stadtmiller, who is undertaking other councillor duties. He's said he'll be running late, however, he will attend. Councillor Dodd, due to illness. Councillor Fitzgerald due to carers leave and carers duties, and Councillor Flannery for medical. All said councillors have requested to attend by digital means.
Thank you, Mr GM. Do I have...
Happy to move.
Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Seconded by Councillor Mackie. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to sympathy expressions, and I will ask the staff, members of the public and councillors to be standing for a minute's silence to express our sympathy on the passing of Vera Durant, Pauline Corkill, Dal Levitt, Norma Clark, Kerry Eastlake, Pansy Butt, Conrad Leonard, Timothy Tierney, Peter McGlynn, Morris Hunter and William Robinson. Thank you, everybody. We'll turn to 6, on page 6, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Piper, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We'll turn to 7, disclosure of interests. Councillor Ingram.
I have declare a non-disclosure of interest in regard to item 12.13 24/194. I'd previously, on 2 occasions, declared a conflict of interest. After taking professional advice, I'd been advised that any conflict of interest is well gone, and the only interest remaining would be my reputational interest, and I'm quite happy with that. Just for people who don't know, I was the person who did the subdivision on the other side of the road to where this matter has been addressed considerable time ago. So that's why I stood aside before, and to my surprise, it's back with us again. So I will be speaking and have some strong thoughts on that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no more...
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I have a non-pecuniary disclosure in relation to item 12.4.24.185, another rail trail. I have a family member who's impacted by it, so non-pecuniary, and I will be participating in the debate and voting.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. The next one, the mayoral minute, it will be dealt with in the confidential in the closed council. The next one we have is 9, the mayoral report. It's in front of you. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Foreman, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors. The next one, we have councillors' reports. We have reports from councillors here. If anybody wants just to keep things moving, Councillor Flannery, do you have anything that you want to include?
Attendance at a couple of meetings at GALONG, which I'll have to get some, I think the 17th of the 7th, attended a meeting of the GALONG Progress Association. There was another meeting on GALONG the week before that, but I don't have the date, and meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and if your indulgence for 30 seconds, I normally don't take up a lot of time in this area. Meetings is minuted, but I'd just like to mention the meetings that I've been participating in just recently, and there's a little story to it. I was approached, I think, because I was a councillor, to see if I'd sit on the local health advisory group, which I said I'd go to the meeting, which led to me being appointed the chair of the local health advisory committee, which then led through the thanks of my mate, the Mayor of Temora, Rick Foreman. I'm now the chair of the Riverina Local Health Advisory Committee, which just happens to throw me onto the Murrumbidgee Primary Health Network Community Advisory Committee. Be careful what you put your hand up for. But in regard to that, and it is to do with council and our community and their health, there's been a presentation organised for the 8th of August to be held at the Hilltops Young High School Library, and it's in regard to what's called Dying to Know Day. It's been presented with speakers from palliative care, funeral directors, and there'll be a legal representation there about the end-of-life legals. I'll flash this on social media a little bit and it will get more promotion. It's not a subject that gets a lot of airplay, but it's very important that citizens are aware they have the opportunity to be informed. So there'll be more promotion about that, which will be held at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the 8th of August, and I'm sure a cup of tea will be provided and there will be flyers put out. And just to finish off, to make sure that everyone fully understands, on the flyers the venue is stated as the Young Library. It's my bad. I missed it. And the flyers were done up. And yes, I do know the name of the Hilltops Young High School Library because I was one of the persons who named it. So if anyone has any problems with what's on the flyer, please contact me. I'm easily contacted. So thank you for your indulgence, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ingham, and thank you for your participation in the health of the Hilltops and the wider area. Councillor Hewson? Thank you. And does anybody else here want to add anything? Councillor Foreman?
I will just add I attended the GALONG Progress Association meeting and AGM on the 18th of July. And today I attended the Young Regional Domestic Violence Reference Group. So it is the YRFDV and also the citizenship ceremony today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I did not go to the citizenship ceremony today and I'm only at one council meeting.
All right.
Today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dunn. We will amend it. Councillor Fitzgerald doesn't seem to be here at the moment. So, and no, it's Councillor Stadtmiller.
I've just received Councillor Stadtmiller is having trouble dialing in. He's got cannot attach to Zoom, so I'll be dealing with the technical issue on that.
Okay.
I'll just say when I was sent my link, it came through, there was the meeting notes and then there was another link stuck in the calendar date. It took me a while to find it as well.
Okay.
If you might inform me.
Thanks, Councillor. In the meantime...
Happy to move those reports.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. And a seconder? Councillor Mackie, those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. The next one, does anybody want to make... I've just lost my place, everybody. Pardon me. Recognition. That's it. That's what I want. Does anybody want to make a councillor recognition? If not, we will move on. Okay. We did have some speakers. So my recommendation is that we actually move the speakers up. If we take them in order that they are in our meeting agenda, that would mean that 12.4 would be first. That's the request for...
I'm happy to second your motion to bring those items forward, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And in the order that we have. Thank you. Councillor Ingram, seconded by Councillor Piper. Those in favour? Unanimous. All right. Thank you. All right. In that case, we'll turn to 12.4. And this is request from BOOROWA GALONG Rail Trail Incorporated.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that we move into committee.
Okay. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second it.
All right. Those in favour? Unanimous? Yep. All right. We're now moving into committee.
Madam Mayor, I might start.
Was the recommendation moved and seconded?
I think we better... You're quite right. Do we have a mover to move into committee? No, we had...
We had a mover into the committee, but we didn't have a mover and seconder for the recommendation.
Do we need a mover and seconder before we move into committee?
Otherwise, we don't know what we're moving into committee for.
We have to have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
I'll second
it. Seconder?
I'll second
it. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Those in favour? Unanimous? All right. Okay. Now, we've already moved the recommendation into committee. Am I right? Okay. Righto. And Councillor Flannery, you want to...
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I'm not 100% sure if it's a question for the Director or for the General Manager. The report is not overly convincing on... it's clear that the Council needs to be the applicant. It's clear to me from reading the report that the Council needs to be the applicant for a lease of the rail trail. It seems that that is an expression of interest as opposed to a formal application to lease the rail trail. What I think is missing, and I'm cognizant that we're about to enter a new council, that these things come in once every 6 months. Projects must be completed by March 2026, so is how I read it, as opposed to applications. I guess my question is, does Council fully understand the processes? If a motion were to be amended such that Council supported the application, does the General Manager and the relevant Director understand the processes that we would be entering and the processes for the application of money is question one. The second question is, who would be the applicant for the funding? Would it be Council or would it be the Rail Trail Committee? And if it's the Rail Trail Committee, my view is it would have to be a 355 section Committee of Council, because we could not have Council as the applicant for a lease, which would essentially mean it becomes the lessee, and another committee of which Council has no auspice, being the holder of funds.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. In terms of the process, we found out this information the day we prepared the report. So I guess the honest answer would be no, we haven't had a great deal of time to be able to digest that and work out exactly what we would need to do. However, the process is fairly clear, as stated in Attachment 6. We do have Council's property manager online, Donna O'Brien, and she may wish to speak further to that. In relation to the application for funding, I believe that would have to be from Council. Donna, did you have anything further to add?
We can't hear.
Donna, I think you're muted.
You're on mute, Donna.
Right, sorry about that. It's quite clear from the advice that was given from Transport for New South Wales that the first step in the process is that council has to endorse the rail trail. There's apparently some legislation that's been passed, and the rail trail people won't be able to do anything without council's endorsement. So that's the very first step in the process. The lease won't be entered into until the funding's granted, but there are a lot of other things. The first being community consultation that will have to be led by council. So any community consultation that has already been completed will have to be done again. And if there are any objections, the advice that I received was that in a lot of cases, Transport for New South Wales will then carry out their own process. And they'll consult with the community as well. It does sound quite daunting, but I think a lot of the work has already been done apart from the community consultation. And with the community consultation being done first, if there's not support for it, well, it doesn't go anywhere.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I ask Donna,
if there's
just purely on the request from the rail trail, even though from your information, council would have to reconduct community consultation, that doesn't preclude council from lodging an application for the lease, does it or doesn't it?
The lease is done at the very last. So lodging an application for the lease doesn't happen until the very last. That's the very last piece of the process.
Okay,
can I just ask quickly? So when
Councillor Mackie and then Councillor Foreman.
When you say quickly, that we can endorse it, the endorsement isn't actually part of the applying for a lease. Are they two separate processes?
That's correct. So council endorses the concept of the rail trail happening.
Without any verbal obligations anywhere in the month, we're purely saying, we think it's a good idea.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the recommendation.
Sorry,
we're in committee.
While we're in committee of the whole, any amendments will need to be outside of the committee.
We're just
You can certainly discuss what you might propose once we come out. However,
that's right.
We actually can't move anything with the committee.
Yeah, because we're in committee. Sorry about that.
Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Well, I was sort of, look, firstly, I'm in favour of tourism. I always think that anything that can support our economy and it gives people that do live in our Hilltops region a lifestyle and things that they can do with their families and their children is always a bonus. But I also think that we have to be, as we move through this, it's a really big project. I mean, the project cost is estimated in the development plan at over $11.5 million. So it is not a small project. So if we're going to enter into something like this and the consideration is for an endorsement and reading the reading in the recommendation just the information that council's worked hard to find from Transport from New South Wales and the advice and the criteria is 1, 2 and 3, I feel that I would be thinking along the lines of supporting the project, but in the way of possibly suggesting that we review the Boorwowa to GALONG rail trails feasibility and development plan, with possibly a report or something coming back to council from our perspective, because there are a lot of issues. And as Donna says, there are a lot of things to cover. And if we're going to do this project, it needs to be done right. So to fully have the support of, I think, the community and know where the community stands. So that's just an opinion of mine.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Piper.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. Tumbarumba is being thrown up at us as a very good bike trail, and I believe it is. I've spoken to people there. I believe it is. Did they have to go through the same rigmarole to get their money as we're being asked to do?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not able to comment on how
Donna might be able to.
They would have, because it's set in the rail trail projects are set in legislation. So this is actually a legislative process that councils and whoever wants to do a rail trail has to go through. So unless they've changed the legislation in the meantime, they would have. Anybody that wants to set up a rail trail has to go through this process. I think it's important to note that their advice was, and it was like word for word, while the idea of a new rail trail can be generated by anybody, applications and decisions will only be considered if the application is led and endorsed by a local council. So if council doesn't endorse the rail trail, it's not going to go anywhere. And that is the very first step in the process. Now, endorsing the rail trail doesn't mean that we then have to do all of these other things. We will have to do community engagement, but, you know, it's a step-by-step process, and endorsing it doesn't tie council to completing it. Council can pull out at any time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it needs to be noted that endorsing this process, if we look at the process on attachment 6, page 56, it outlines what council's obligations would then be. It would then become our project.
And would that mean that we would have to do all the studies again?
I'm not sure if we would have to do the studies again, because we were a significant funding body of the original study, the feasibility study. So I don't think that we would be doing them again, but we would have to analyse them ourselves.
Right. So there's a fair bit of work.
Correct.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, look, when this matter first came in front of me, it was from a request from the organising committee, and looked over at the workshop, and I mentioned at that workshop some of the wording I was concerned about. Because of this, it is essential that council do this. There's also a little issue about the funding and the leasing, but we believe that this constraint can be addressed. A couple of red flags went up with this councillor there and then. I thought, well, this is asking council to make a decision on the run about something that we don't know a lot about. But from what I have been told, it's a very simple process of obtaining a lease. Well, guess what? Staff have investigated the matter, and it's not a simple process, as we all agree now, at all. It would come at considerable time and considerable cost. And while what my compatriot, the Deputy Mayor, said, it makes a lot of sense in regard to looking at it and at some stage bring it back to council. But I have to put on the table that I have a real problem through the funding issues, given that just recently, a few months ago, we adopted and said we'd put in place a financial improvement strategy. The simple way of explaining that is we all acknowledged we had to have less money going out and more money coming in. The concept that's in front of us at the moment is in direct opposition to the financial improvement strategy that we adopted. Having said that, tourism, great concept. In a perfect world, unfortunately, Hilltops Council's financial position is far from being in a perfect or pretty world. So there's a lot of work to be done. Whatever we come out of this tonight, and I sense from Madam Deputy Mayor might have a resolution that might go in front of council, so we'll leave it to that. But yeah, when you read the report, there's no doubt in my mind that where it is led by, it has to be led by council. It has to be applied by council. So we just need to make sure the council does its due diligence before we go too much further. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Director, can I just ask if, depending on Councillor Foreman's amendment, as council, do we have the resources to do the investigation?
I believe we could do an initial investigation. I think the issue would more be to manage the whole project and deliver that project. We do not have the resources, and that would be obviously an allocation that council would have to make.
And that would depend on the funding, presumably.
That's correct.
Would the funding cover that that management? It's probably not.
I think that there's a chance that the funding could cover that. It depends what the funding is. Yeah.
I think the crucial part to it is to realise that if you push the button, there's no turning back.
Is that true though? If we could endorse it and then the process follows that we...
Yeah. And then you apply for the grant, you get the grant, then the council has it for the rest of its life.
But we also have the future to look forward to, and we also have to look forward to, or look to the future of Hilltops, and tourism is certainly part of it. And at the moment we might have those funds, but we also have to be forward thinking, I think, in thinking, well, is this a project that would be of benefit to the whole of Hilltops? That's how I understand it. But
I'd only add one more clause to your statement, Madam Mayor. When you say the Hilltops community, is it going to be beneficial to the financial standing of Hilltops Council? Thank you.
Thank you. The council, it is our council. It is part of the
Happy to move out of committee, councillors?
Just before we do, I was going to say if we have finished. Thank you.
Happy to move out of committee, Madam Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. And thank you, Councillor Foreman. All right, we've moved out of committee now.
I'm sorry, I've just received a text message from...
Microphone.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor. Through you, Madam Mayor, I've just received a text message from Councillor Stadtmiller, who has now requested a leave of absence for today's meetings for various reasons. That I'd only say confidential. We'd have to move that we accept his leave of absence.
All right. So we've heard the request for leave of absence.
Can I just clarify? Have we moved out of committee yet?
Yes, we have moved. Councillor Ingram, seconded by Councillor Foreman. Moved.
Was there a vote?
No, we got interrupted by. Yes. Okay. Let's vote first. Those in favour, moving out of committee. Unanimous. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one, and that is with Councillor Stadtmiller requesting leave of absence, and
I need someone moving.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll move her. Councillor Piper, seconder. Councillor Hewson, those in favour.
I'll have to take.
Councillor Stadtmiller is actually on a Goldenfields conference.
Okay. So for the request, I'm sorry, I'm just taking the notes of Councillor Mackie, Councillor Rolls, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Piper. Those against.
And Councillor Dodd.
And Councillor Dodd. Those against. Councillor Ingram, Councillor Foreman, Councillor.
Okay, it has been moved.
Accepted.
It's accepted. Thank you. All right. Okay, let's go back now to 12.4. The recommendation.
Madam Mayor, or with your indulgence, Councillor Foreman, I move that we move the recommendation with a modification to B, so that A states note the request for the endorsement, blah, 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 and B states that Council bring back a report to the August meeting detailing the full process required for Council to lodge an application for the lease and the funding required.
We're just waiting for it to be written up.
So, Councillor Flannery, we'll put this up on the screen, but just before we do that, the proposal that you would need Councillor Ingram, who seconded the motion? Councillor Foreman? Yeah, Councillor Foreman. Council bring, this is for B, leave A as is, which is note the request from BOOROWA, GALONG, Rail Trail, etc., to endorse the application for transport. B, Council bring a full report on the process and report back to Council. As simple as that, or more to that, Councillor?
No, to the August Council meeting.
Yep.
Detailing processes required for Council to be the applicant, including an application for funding to construct. Just while that's being typed up, through you, Madam Mayor, I note there's this funding round, and I don't know if the old RDA grants are gone, but I do know we've got a federal election coming up by May next year. So if there are any funding rounds that are coming up outside this grant being alluded to, well, then we need to know the requirements.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. We'll just make sure that.
Okay, so Councillor Flannery, it's now on screen. A is the same, note the request from BOOROWA, GALONG, Rail Trail Inc. to endorse the application to Transport for New South Wales for the formation of the BOOROWA to GALONG Rail Trail, and Council bring a full report on the process and report back to Council to the August Council meeting, detailing the processes required for Council to be the applicant, including funding to construct.
Look, I think that's sufficient. So I did have the word applicant for the lease as well as funding to construct, but I think it's one and the same. I mean, you can't construct it without leasing it. So
to lease the land, yeah. So,
okay.
So, Councillor Foreman, are you happy with that amendment as put by Councillor Flannery?
There's two reports in that. Just for the sake of wording, it's got Council bring back a full report on the processes. It just needs to say bring back a full report to the August Council meeting detailing the processes. That's it.
That's it? Okay. So just, Councillor Foreman, you can accept this as that's the motion, then you can move an amendment to your own motion subject to Councillor Flannery accepting that and move forward, or you can not accept that.
I don't accept that.
Okay.
No.
So, okay. So, so Councillor Flannery, you will therefore need to move.
Well, I'd like to move that. I'd like to move that as an amendment. If there's a seconder.
And would vote that. Is there someone to second that amendment?
There's.
I can't see you, Councillor Dodd. Are you?
There she is.
Yep, you can see it. Okay, so you're not seconding. So is there a seconder to move that amendment? I'm not seeing any hands.
So the amendment.
And so the amendment can't be debated, Councillor Flannery.
Okay.
So therefore, we'll pass there for Councillor Dwarman to propose something that if it's accepted by Councillor Flannery, it therefore becomes the motion. If it's rejected, you will therefore have to move an amendment.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to leave A as is in the recommendation, leave B as is in the recommendation, and I would like to add C, which would say instruct the General Manager to review the BOOROWA to GALONG rail trail, feasibility study and development plan, and bring a report back to Council for consideration as part of the 2025-2026 budget.
Do you have a time for it to be brought back to Council?
Well, I thought that this would be beneficial to the new councillors because they will be the ones with the 4-year term that are elected that would be possibly making the decisions around the rail trail. So I thought it only fair that it comes back to the new council was my reasoning behind that.
Okay, thank you. We're just getting it up.
So, Councillor Flannery, as the original mover of the motion, we're just about to share the screen.
I'm at a complete loss as to what the 25-26 budget's got to do with it.
Well, so far as my understanding, we haven't allocated any money, and we have done this the what are we now 24-25 budgets. So I was considered that we had already set our budgets, so we would look at it for the next financial year.
Well, just with due respect, it's not clear what bring. The wording I had was bring a report back exactly almost exactly the same wording. I mean, the General Manager had to review the report presented to be able to, of the BOOROWA to GALONG rail trail feasibility study. The General Manager had to review that to be able to bring back a report for the August meeting as I requested. The inclusion of the 25-26 budget means that if the General Manager would bring back a report in August, as I requested, and it was clear that Council could meet all the requirements by simply lodging an application and had no obligations on the budget, had no impact on the budget, we now can't do it under that. I mean, what if it said that all Council has to do is basically work with the rail trail and their money that they've raised through their own sources to lodge the application? Now you're precluding that by putting the 25-26 budget in there.
Well, I would strongly
suggest you can make that decision once the report comes back to Council.
I would strongly suggest that with the amount of work that needs to be done, I would strongly suggest it is not going to be done by August.
How do you know?
Well, I'm just strongly suggesting I doubt very much a body of work this important will be presented thoroughly by August.
Can I ask the General Manager?
To you, Madam Mayor, the first point from what I'm hearing from Councillor Flannery is he does not accept that change, so therefore you would have to move this as an amendment to the.
I'll accept the change with the exclusion of the 25-26 budget because I think the General Manager simply has to look at has the rail trail or the General Manager will delegate it to the Director, has the feasibility study met the requirements of the feasibility study, what other details might be required to lodge an expression of interest for lease, and that's exactly what you would bring back a report to Council on. It's not about redoing the feasibility study. It's about what the criteria are for council to be involved in the processes. That is all I think we need to know as councillors, what the criteria are for council to be involved, including the funding criteria.
Just through you,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, to the General
Councillor
Manager.
Maggie.
August seems a little short. The budget seems a little long. In your opinion, how long might you need to do what Tony's suggesting?
For what Councillor Flannery is suggesting and what Councillor Foreman is suggesting, the instruction that I believe is there is to consider the feasibility study and the development plan, so the reports that have been provided, and report back to council what the financial impact is. It's up to you whether or not that should form part of the consideration of the 25-26 budget, or the matter just should be considered when I've completed the report. They are extensive reports. Again, I've had no instruction at this point to do such an exercise, and I'm quite capable of doing an exercise like that. Without reviewing the document in detail again, I'm not sure I could commit to turning that around within 2 weeks with the other duties.
I mean, let's face it, the General Manager is not, or staff is not qualified to review any feasibility study. That's for the government department to review. But we're not qualified to. We send these documents off to the government departments to review them. You're simply saying, do we have a feasibility study? And is the feasibility study dealing with the GALONG to BOOROWA rail trail line? The government will judge whether it's met the criteria. I mean, you're kidding yourself. You think we're the decision maker?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Well, we are the lead. Council is expected to do the lead, and as far as I've in the report, it also says that we have got no cost to council regarding to the time, the how much long it's going to take the planning department, nor do we have a risk assessment on the rail trail. So it's a decent body of work to get this over the line. And
so that's what we need, is a report to say that these are the processes council needs to go through. We need to go through 5 processes or 6 processes or 3 processes or 4 processes, and then we can make an informed decision. Whereas I think you're actually jumping right to the starting line of the race to say, well, we want the General Manager to review the feasibility study and see if it's adequate. We want to know what the costs are. I'm simply saying, let's just sadly or regrettably, the Rail Trail Committee haven't engaged with council thoroughly enough to say, this, we would like you on board as a council, and these are the full processes required, because clearly you don't have the resources to build it. We don't have the resources to build it. So we need 100% funding, which in my view would include funding for the time spent on it, or council provide some work in kind. I mean, it's not as though you don't provide work in kind. It could come out of the tourism budget when you actually got to do the lodgement of applications. But I think we're getting everything cart before the horse. We need to know what the processes are for council to be engaged in the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Flannery.
I'll just add one thing. Look, a review is a review. So, Councillor Flannery's point, a review is for council to actually review what was presented to us, and we do have, with all due respect, the report is in front of us of the steps that we have to take. So in order to support this program, council also needs to review what's been presented by the development plan and the feasibility study, do our own risk assessment. We've got the processes in front of us, but we need to have our council make its own mind up as to what is in what's in the processes of those 2 plans, and see if it is viable, and do our own risk assessment.
And I'm still telling you, that's got nothing to do with the current situation. We don't even know what the processes are. We're reviewing a document that we don't even know what the processes are. We might be told by the General Manager that the processes are D, E and F, and we can't even worry about the feasibility study yet.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Am I right in considering that for us to take ownership of this, we have to
Understand the processes.
I beg your pardon?
We have to understand the processes, all the processes.
Thank you. And we have to take ownership of the processes. And I think, is that the nub of what we're talking about at the moment?
Well, part of it, just from a procedural point of view, just so we know what the councillors are discussing. Councillor Foreman, you've put forward an amendment to the motion which has not been accepted by the mover of the original motion. So therefore, are you moving that amendment? So therefore, you would need a seconder. Therefore, we would debate the amendment. So is there a seconder? So therefore, councillors, before you now is you are debating whether there is the attachment of C to the motion. Not deciding the motion as a whole, but whether or not C becomes part of the motion, which you will therefore then debate.
Right. And Councillor Foreman, do you like to speak?
Are we just voting on all those in favour? Are we voting now?
No. Basically now it's the amendment that you proposed is to be debated. We've heard from yourself about the amendment. You've heard from Councillor Flannery's first right to discuss that. So therefore it's now up to the other councillors if they wish to have a comment. If there's no further comment, certainly the amendment will be put to the vote. Then that will become the motion, and then you will debate the motion as a whole again.
All right. Any discussion? We've heard from Councillor Foreman and we've heard from Councillor Flannery.
Sorry.
No, I'd like to speak against the motion.
Yes. All right. You want to speak against the motion? Pardon me.
I want to speak against the amendment to the motion. Yeah. And look, I want to speak against it at the risk that I might be considered not supporting it. But very simply, grants of this magnitude need council support. It's clear they need now council support. But any application that council wants to make for significant funding, be it the Boorowah to GALONG water, HARDEN to Boorowah water, be it this, there's a process that has to be gone through. Now, in relation to the water supply to Boorowah, we know we have to be the applicant. We then become the owner of that water infrastructure. There's a whole understanding we have as a council. We have a rail trail committee that support from the GALONG to Boorowah Rail Trail Committee, and they have by and large operated outside council's auspice. And we do not understand the processes to bring them into our umbrella or for us to operate in conjunction with them because we haven't been engaged. And I think this is putting the cart way before the horse. This is almost assuming that on one hand we support it. And I'm saying to you, we should have a report that comes back to council that very simply says, we've had an application, the GALONG to Boorowah Rail Trail Committee would like us to engage in the application of a process to lease the land. And from that, no one can apply for funding until council is A, the applicant, and B, community engagement. I would like to see a pretty simple document that says the funding amount is for this, projects of $5 to $50 million. You need to go through all these criteria to meet the processes. And then if you've met the criteria, you can lodge an application. It is pretty simple stuff. And I think that's what we need before, whereas putting C in absolutely means there's no time frame obligation on the general manager to bring a report back, and B, that you cannot do anything until the 1st of July next year, albeit if the government were to announce a snap election and announce $500 million for regional projects, we'd be excluded from it. I mean, it's just, I understand the concern about budgetary constraints, but once we've had a report on the processes, we can actually make those decisions. So I just think you're narrowing the scope down too much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Flannery.
Just you, Madam Mayor, very quickly. I mean,
are you speaking for or against?
Can I speak with,
You're making comments.
with Tony?
All right, that's against.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Tony's
Councillor
theory. I just think August is too soon. But I think Tony's right that I think we're complicating it, that the beginning of it shouldn't be as complex as what we think we're getting into. It's only the very beginning. I just have an issue with August is very, to give people time enough to sort of put it in front of us. But I have to agree with Tony that I think we're complicating it. It could be a very simple beginning.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Mackie. We've got 2 speakers against. Do we have anybody else for it? Councillor Ingram.
I'm not too sure whether I'm speaking for or against.
Getting a bit complicated.
I am. I'm a bit torn. I can see both councillors' points of view very clearly. I recognise the Deputy Mayor's concern about the financial constraints, and it's greatly appreciated. Also appreciate Councillor Flannery's concern that we don't want to miss a boat that might sail that we might have been able to be on. But again, I very much agree with Councillor Mackie that August definitively is too close a timeline, I think, for what we need to see. I don't know whether we can have an amendment to get a marriage in between here somewhere so we can get this matter moved and move on. Whether the Deputy Mayor would be happy with a further amendment to come back to a September meeting, and whether Councillor Flannery would be happy with that, I don't know. I'm just throwing some things in the air now because at the moment we're not really going. We all seem to agree in the big picture. We're just not too sure how we want to go about it. And I think we need to adjust to that at this point. Thank you.
Look, I would be happy with it. Something that defined a report back to council that I would have thought, I would be happy with a closer timeline. August, I'd prefer September, but where the general manager would engage with the staff that says, for us to enter into the lease, we need to have read the feasibility study or have a feasibility study, have all these things in place. I would think the Rail Trail Committee have got to be brought in as a 355 committee. I think there's a whole lot of regulatory requirements we need to do if we are to get engaged in the process. And I just want to know what they are. If we're to apply for it, there's a whole lot of processes as part of these grant rounds that are criteria. And that should be in this report that state because we've only actually got it secondhand. There's no document, there's no written document from anyone really that says these are the criteria for the grant round, and then a drill down onto those criteria. So I'm not actually that interested in the feasibility study. I'm interested in what the criteria are of the grant round and how that impacts on us relative to the request by the Rail Trail Committee for us to be engaged in the process.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow an amendment.
Foreshadow an amendment, okay.
That I believe might be able to
work us out of this conundrum.
Suit both parties, and that's simply that it's an amalgamation of Councillor Flannery and the Deputy Mayors be brought back to Council for consideration at the September Council meeting. Take out 25-26 budget line.
There is no September Council meeting.
October, sorry.
The first council meeting.
First council meeting. And hopefully the mover and the seconder of the past are happy with that and we can make a decision.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor.
The only thing I would request, Councillor Ingham, with respect to the grant application round, because at this stage it reads that the General Manager is reviewing the feasibility study.
What would you like, Councillor Flannery? Again there?
Simply the last sentence, have with respect to the or any grant application rounds. Because I think, as it reads, it's the General Manager is reviewing the feasibility study.
I've lost what was there here.
Sorry, I'm just assisting our Minute Secretary who's stepped in for our long-term Minute Secretary. We're just following the process.
So on C, if we delete...
Councillor Flannery, this is a foreshadow. I'm just making sure that the Minute Secretary we've captured the amendment which is being debated. I'd just like to capture the foreshadowed motion or the foreshadowed amendment, if this amendment fails, from Councillor Ingram.
Yeah, and
that'll be a separate one. So just please bear with me. So, Councillor Ingram, can I ask you to look at the screen? This is the foreshadowed amendment. Can you please repeat your...
That's not on my screen, the foreshadowed. Can I just say that the motion on screen that is written as foreshadowed is exactly the same motion that we're...
That's right, Tony. We're just sorry, Councillor Flannery, I apologise for that. We're just getting the wording now from Councillor Ingram.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Ingram. So it's instruct the General Manager to review the Boorowa to GALONG rail trail feasibility study and development plan and available grant funding, and bring back a report to Council to the October. Bring back a report to Council to the October Council meeting and get rid of the rest. Yeah. Okay, so from a procedural point of view, this has been the foreshadowed. If the mover and seconder accept the foreshadowed amendment, it then becomes the amendment, and then it then becomes the motion. Councillor Flannery, can you now see that on screen? Which is it's foreshadowed, but if you and Councillor Foreman agree to this foreshadowed motion, it can become the motion, and the amendment effectively is abandoned.
I'm happy to accept that amendment.
Okay, Councillor Foreman.
I'm also happy to accept.
Okay, so forget everything that I said about amendments and otherwise. Through the acceptance of the mover and seconder, this is now the motion before you, councillors, and it's now up to you to debate it or discuss. Whatever.
All right, so we have in front of us A, B and C, moved by
Councillor Flannery, and seconded by Councillor Foreman.
And Councillor Flannery, do you want to make any further comment?
No, I support that. I think the report needs to detail the processes for council to be involved, should it so choose to be involved.
Well, I presume that would be part of the report.
Look, that's a reasonable request where we will articulate that in the report.
Yeah. Okay. And Councillor Foreman? do you want to speak anymore?
No,
Does anybody want to speak against? If not, I will put that to the vote. Those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you, Councillor. Let's move on to the next one. Here, actually, I can. Well, right. We have in front of us 1210 DA 2023 24191 subdivision, 8 lots into 7 lots, 130 Allendale Road, Young, and the recommendation is there. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Do I have a mover? Page is 106. Look for 1210. Got 1210 at the top. 114. We all got it? The recommendation.
On page 114, is that correct?
No, sorry, that's the wrong one.
Mine's 106.
Well, no, but you recall that there was a report that moved from the document it's report 1210.
1210. If you go by the number, you're right.
114 in the original.
All right. So in
document.
mine it's 106, and then yours it's 114. Right?
Yep.
Okay. The recommendation is there. Do I have a mover?
I'd like to move it with an amendment, please.
Thank you, Mary. Do I have a second? Councillor?
Before we have
Find out what the amendment is.
That's correct.
I'd like to add B, note that Allendale Road will need a planned upgrade.
B, note that Allendale Road.
It's as simple as that, Councillor Dodd.
It's as simple as that. I just think it needs to be on everybody's radar that when this gets passed, we are acknowledging that road needs significant work and will need significant funding over the next couple of years.
Just a question for the director to include that.
Councillor Flannery? Yes.
To include that would, in my view, obligate council to upgrade the road when the benefit is going to be to the developer.
Okay, so before we enter that, sorry, Councillor Flannery, through you, Madam Mayor, is there a seconder for
got a seconder
for that the motion as moved? If there's no seconder to that, we then have an unmoved motion at this point.
Councillor Foreman.
Councillor Foreman has seconded it. Okay, it's now up for debate.
Up for debate. And Councillor Dodd, would you like to?
Sorry.
Can't she speak to you?
Oh, she can. There is then a question from Councillor Flannery.
All right. Councillor Dodd, do you want to
I'm happy to take other advice on this from staff, but I feel that there is no planning reason for us not to, for this not to be approved. I think that the road is terrible, and if we approve this, I think we also need to acknowledge that. Now, maybe there's a better way to actually phrase that, but I don't think that we can be. I think we can't refuse it on planning grounds, but at the same time, that road is terrible, and to increase the traffic on there, it's more than just a maintenance grade or gravel resheeting to make that road, bring that road up to standard. Now, I mean, there's no time. I've put no time frame in there because that leaves that open. I'm happy to take advice from staff as to whether that's if there's a better way to word that.
Jamie, can I? Sorry. Have you Mary still talking?
Yeah. No, I'm finished.
Just Mary, I think Councillor Dodd, have you finished or are you still talking?
I've finished.
Can I just ask Jamie a quick question?
Councillor Mackie.
When it says on my 114, the site is accessed via Allendale Road, being a gravel road listed in the work schedule of the Young Shire Council Section 94 contributions plan for future upgrading works. Does that answer Mary's question?
So through you, Madam Mayor, that does indeed answer that question, and I think what Councillor Dodd's trying to do by that amendment is just to make it abundantly clear that once you take the contribution, it means that the council has an obligation to spend that money on that works, and in the contributions plan, that is to spend it in a short to medium term, and it's for council to determine what short to medium term means.
All right, thank you.
I guess my other concern is that money that is there may not be enough to bring the road up to the standard that would be required for doubling the traffic essentially that's on it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dodd. Councillor Ingram.
I was just going to comment on Councillor Dodd. I don't see the need for it to be there at all. It's in the document. In answer to your question about the funding that will be gained by the proponent, it won't touch the bottom foot of what needs to be done. But by trying to put an item dot point like that there, you're trying to commit council staff to a timeline, which is one thing is very hard to do with the work schedule, but the other thing is financially, it will cost a lot of money. If we haven't got that money and you want to put a timeline on it, it just puts council in a very precarious position. I just don't think there's any need for the dot point to be there to note it. It's noted in the recommendation. Having said that, I will be speaking against this when it's my turn. Thank you.
All right.
Through you, Madam Mayor, look, I had a question for the director, which went that we require Allendale Road work to be done, albeit there's no timeline there. It could be done by 2050, according to that schedule. And noting the comment on page 114 that the site is accessed, blah, 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 and is part of the work schedule for the Section 94 contributions plan. Do we have any idea whether Peter's got enough money to pay for?
So through you, Madam Mayor, no, the contributions we will generate from this development and even a catchment of all that's developed around it would not cover the cost of the upgrade.
So do we have an estimated cost in today's terms of what it would cost, of what the upgrade work for Allendale Road would be?
So through you, Madam Mayor, only a rough order of cost that was done as part of another item looking at the opportunity for getting grant funding through the Federal Housing Assistance Scheme. But approximately around $1 million, but that's a very rough estimate.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ferring. Can I ask a question of the director? I presume that there is a DA consent for the 8 blocks already. Is that right?
So through Madam Mayor, the current site has dwelling entitlements for 4 blocks, and this would add an additional 4 dwelling entitlements. So
there's already 4
dwelling entitlements with the configuration of the lots as they historically have been.
Okay, so this is making it into
7. So 7, so there'd be 3 more.
So 3 more.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, any more questions?
Through Madam Mayor, the motion is there before you on that it was moved and seconded. That is the motion. Unless there's amendments to that motion.
I'd like to speak against the motion if we're going to do some process then.
All right,
okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ng.
I spoke when this first came to council and asked for it to be deferred. And while the planning staff have clearly indicated that there's no reason they can't see a reason why they should say no, I'm still conflicted with the contradictory reports in regard to the threatened species and the water table. The initial reports that were done and studies done on that particular area showed great concern, but when we get a developer who comes in and wants to develop that area like that, and as has been seen very recently in another area in town where the second report comes in that's paid for by the applicant, everything seems to move. The concerns about the water table move. The concerns about biodiversity and threatened species seems to move. We'll just move that over there and that saves that. It's a bit like a plan on a creek and there's all sort of issues around it, but we'll just draw another map and the creek's further away. These are all in reports that developers and applicants pay a lot of money for, to be written in particular ways. Staff on planning desktops and computers, yeah, this all looks fine. But in reality, that's not the real world. And I'm a bit real world. I just cannot, in good conscience, vote for something that has so many conflicting reports in regard to biodiversity and threatened species. And the road is another issue altogether, a separate issue to me. But, yeah, so I can't see myself supporting this matter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? We've had one for Councillor Dodd and Councillor Ingram spoke against it.
Madam Mayor, I just have, if there's concern about that point B, before this motion gets put, should somebody foreshadow a motion to go back to the first one if it doesn't get up? So that we're actually voting.
If councillors want it to be determined.
Yeah.
And not, well, yeah.
Right, but
I'd hate for that to be the reason that it sorry.
So do you want to?
I mean, I think it's important that we note that the road is not actually suitable, but at the same time, I don't want this to get voted down because of that. And then
Councillor, you can't have it both ways. You either want the amendment put in or you want it taken out. I'm sorry.
I want the amendment put in, Councillor Ingram. I'm actually thinking about other people that want it to be voted on just as is, yes or no, rather than the.
Okay. So we will leave it in.
Leave it in, but yeah, I'm just saying, does somebody want to consider foreshadowing something different? That's all.
Well, I haven't heard anything in the room, so if nobody else wants to make any other comment, those in favour of the recommendation? Those in favour? Those against? All right, it is lost. It is lost. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. All right, let's move on to the next one. And that is item 1211. And that is modification to consent 1 KARABAH Avenue, Young. And the recommendation. Mine's 246, so I'm not much help to you at the moment. Yes.
I'd like to move.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram.
To approve. 0014.1.
All right, we have a seconder. All right. So
I'd like to speak to it.
Yes.
You happy? You good?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. You can speak to it.
Firstly, I'll note that I didn't go for a drive because I didn't have to, because I lived there when I first came to town, around the corner from where they're talking about. And the proposal to make anyone in an application to put a footpath around that area is, as the Speaker said, it's not just unreasonable, it's not practical. And that's me just being practical again. The applicant voluntarily submitted that they would be happy to do a new footpath in front of their new dwelling. But like me, they're struggling to see why they should have to put another $15,000 or $20,000 worth of footpath in front of an existing building that's never had a footpath there and doesn't go anywhere, doesn't join anything. They're quite happy to do a footpath in front of their new house they're building on the block. Not a problem in the world. Happy to go along with it. They, and I, like them, cannot see why they would be requested to do that footpath around the corner on the slope, and it's been well stated that the other side of the road is the side that's preferred in a form of PAMP, and it's where everyone walks and transverses, because on the side where council say it's got to be done, there's raised hydrants, there's raised driveways, there's a natural slope. It is just, again, I believe desktop computer, yeah, this is what they've got to do, this is the regulations, and I'm not saying staff aren't applying what's their regulations. All I'm asking is some common sense in the world, that when you can do something and you're expected to do it, you do it. But when it's near impossible and completely unreasonable and doesn't achieve absolutely anything in front of a house that's been there for 50 years without a footpath, that doesn't join anything, when they're willing to do the footpath on the new house, I just cannot truly take it in. So for that reason, I would ask for their modification to not have to do the footpath in front of the existing building passed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Do we have a speaker against it? Councillor Foreman?
I would like to ask a question. In Mr. Filmer's comments, he did make he mentioned I think it was a dozen or so footpaths that or
19 other places.
19 other places that he felt that had didn't have to do the footpath, whatever his. So can you explain that statement?
So through you, Madam Mayor, it was an extensive list and I haven't had the opportunity to go through and check them all off. I can only assume that some of them would have been prior to the current DCP that's been in place. All I can say is that what this report's demonstrated is that over the last couple of years, we have consistently applied an upgrade of their entire lot for due occupancy. So on page, it's 247 in my report, but I think it may be 253 in yours, Eating. Is a list of the 4 that we have applied the rule of the DCP consistently. So that's all I can speak to tonight. We can obviously take that on notice and give you that feedback if you would like, but yeah, we haven't had the opportunity to review them all.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Foreman? Are there any other questions people want to put? We've had Councillor Ingram who's spoken against it. For the motion, do we have anybody who wants to speak against it?
Would it be possible to, I don't know how I do this, but I would like the information around the 19 residents mentioned, because by mentioning 4, I don't know, I think if there is 19 and there is some sort of other precedents set that we're saying we can't do this because of precedent, then maybe there is something in there that allows us to make a more informed decision.
So it's very clear from the Councillor Ingram's motion to just approve the modification. You would be foreshadowing a motion to what you would be saying to defer the matter rather than debate it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I just make the clarification? Can I just make the clarification, or can I get the General Manager to make the clarification? Anything that comes before Council can be voted in favour or against. To say that we can't do something because of precedent means that it wouldn't be able to come before council. So
that's correct, Councillor. It's only a consideration for councillors.
Exactly. So it is not. There is no legal impediment to us making this decision.
No, other than whatever the legislation says, there is no impediment for you to vote however you vote.
To the director, I think I'll vote. I'll speak against the motion. My concern is that if it has been consistently enforced for the last couple of years and it is part of our plans, my concern is that if we do approve the modification, then and I'm taking Councillor Flannery say about creating a precedent, but it does set a precedent, which in common law is taken into practice anyway, for further planning. So that would mean that anybody really who is doing a modification or a plan could say, I don't want to put a footpath. Of course, that's 50-50, I'm right saying that, in it. And to me, that is of great concern. Am I right in feeling concerned?
Only if you think your brain's not capable of sorting out the facts.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Thank you.
Can I ask?
Can I just have the answer to my question first? Thanks, Councillor Mackie.
So, Madam Mayor, we are coming to the end of the lifetime of this DCP. We're in the process of updating it. So, any decision you make now would be a factor to consider on any similar applications. But as I would say with every application, you need to consider it on its strategic and site merit. And, you know, one of the classic things if you ask planners is if you ask them a question on anything, the answer you get is it depends, because it always depends on its strategic and site-specific merit. So, yeah.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, I was just going to say to you, Jamie, when they talk of the unreasonableness, I feel that that's a fair call in this situation. I don't think it's going to set a precedent for every decision we make, but I think in this case, in my mind, it is unreasonable.
And so through Madam Mayor, that's the reason why this is in front of you, so you can make the decision as elected members. Yeah, we've applied the rules as that's been set by the council, and it's your discretion that.
And that concerns me that the rules have been set. Okay, thank you. We have had 2 against, 1 speaking, 2 for it, pardon me, Councillor Mackie, and 1 against. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak against it?
I'd like to write a reply, thank you.
Yes. If nobody else wants to speak, Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. Just to write a reply to your comments, Madam Mayor. I wrote down common sense. You talk about precedents. I'm aware of a number of the places that was mentioned by the Speaker. I also know another half a dozen on top of that that hasn't had this applied to it. As I said in my opening statement, these people coughed up and said they're happy to do the footpath in front of their new premises that they're building, that they lodged the DA for. Not only did they think it was unfair or unreasonable to have to do another $15,000 worth of footpath in front of a prior house that's been there 50 years without one, that connects to nothing. And on top of that, if you want to go and have a drive and have a look at the slope and the raised driveways and the raised everything else, as I said, I lived right there. It is just unpractical. I respect staff and what they have to do and the job they've got to do. That's why we're here as councillors. So thank you for listening to me in regard to this matter, and I'm quite happy for it to go to the vote and see some common sense prevail. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. I will now put it to the vote. And just remind everybody that it is to approve the modification application. Those in favour?
Councillor.
The recommend.
Is to approve.
To approve the modification. All right, those in favour. So I'll say it again. Those in favour?
Councillor Ingram, Councillor Foreman, Councillor Mackey, Councillor Hewson, Councillor Piper, Councillor Dodd, Councillor Flannery.
Those against?
Councillor Rolls.
Okay, thank you. It has passed. Thank you, councillors. Let's move on to the next one, please. And that is 1213.
It should be page 372 of the printed copies you have before you, councillors.
And 372. Understand. 1213. You'll be a 2023 house at 19
I'm sorry, I didn't my speaker on. I'd like to move a motion on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ingram.
And the motion is to approve the development application number DA2023/0187 for a dwelling house at lot 322 DP 754582 Henry Lawson Way.
All right, thank you. That's your motion?
That is my motion.
All right, thank you.
I'll second it.
And we have a seconder.
So just procedurally, is there any other additional things that would be required to enact your motion other than just
the
approve
conditions
it?
were there before.
So through you, Mr. General Manager, so yes, we included in attachment 3 both the conditions that were in place. So you've got the building blocks to make that motion. The only thing that council to add are the reasons why you wish to move that way, so that we can report to the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, because we have to give reasons for why you're making that decision.
I imagine merit and procedure would cover that off.
So through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Flannery, last time it was considered, had come up with a series of reasons, and you may like to recite them again. And if
can we go back to where we should be, and I'll speak on what I've got to say, and then if I need opinions from staff, I'll ask for them, please.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I was just trying to make sure that the motion was legal, that we could enact it, and what the advice of the director is. Well, what the director has requested is those additional words so that we can enact it. It's not against your motion, councillor. It's just to make sure that we've got the words.
With the conditions of consent that were with the original motion that was sent away for approval. Thank you. Put that in there.
There was no...
With the conditions of consent that were there, when it was deferred the first time, this matter, it was sent away. Would you like me to read out, read out what was the recommendation, what the motion was?
The matter was deferred, councillor. The matter was deferred.
To have the conditions of consent attached for approval.
Then that's the consideration of approval at the following meeting. There was no approval.
It came back, but it didn't come back for approval. It came back being declined.
Can I just help interrupt and help?
Hold on.
No, I think I can help here.
Thank you.
May surprise you. We're looking for the reasons, and the reasons would be as outlined by the proponent that it is consistent with the LEP, the Hilltops LEP, in that the subdivision actually minimises the impact on the zone because it will leave a larger holding for agricultural purposes than the alternative of subdividing it into 2 lots. consistent with whatever it is, clause 6, blah, 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 of the LEP.
I believe that's 4.2A. No, it's 4. So it'd be 4.2A would be the relevant section that's being relied upon. To fulfil Councillor Flannery's words.
It should say compared to the alternative, as opposed to or compared to the alternative.
At the end of that sentence, Councillor?
Well, it's very clear that if we refuse this, the proponent will come back and subdivide the lot into 2 lots to meet the requirements, and therefore the residual lot will actually be a smaller lot for agricultural purposes. So I dispute the recommendation as put up by staff, because the recommendation that Councillor Ingram is putting forward is actually providing a bigger lot for agricultural purposes than the alternative that would be available to the owner, which would be subdividing it into 2 lots, one of which would go to rural, one of which would go to residential, and the other would be left for agricultural purposes. I mean, this is a no-brainer.
Councillor Ingram, thank you for that. Councillor Flannery, that as requested by the director, this is what we are required to have a reason. So, Councillor Ingram, is those words you're satisfied with?
Thank you for your assistance, Councillor Flannery, and it just goes to show we don't caucus. And I was struggling to put them words together, so well done. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. So could you just please explain the 2 lot? What is that? Can they do 2 lots on that? On what they want to divide up into the 9.3? Is that what that's saying?
So through you, Madam Mayor, this is the reason that council was put forward. You've had the planning advice, which is contrary to that view. If you'd like me to talk through that, I'll answer any questions. But obviously, you've got their planning advice. This is your reason. So I can't really talk to it other than to acknowledge that that's what you've got there.
So through Madam Mayor, the question is with the two lots. My understanding of this is that the question before councillors is there is the small lot for the dwelling, which is what is being put forward for the motion for Councillor Ingram and Councillor Flannery. The planning advice in relation to the documentation for the reasons, and there is differing views from a professional within the community and staff that to meet the criteria of the documentation as the advice from planners is they would have to subdivide the large block into 2 separate blocks. So instead of having a small block here with the large block, 2 separate blocks. That's the number.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Jamie, from my memory last time, it was you subdivide it and you would build on a good part of the dirt, or you would build it in the rocky knoll that you can't do anything with. So that's right.
So through you, Madam, the planning question you got in front of you is about the minimum lot size for the dwelling. This is an application for a dwelling. It isn't for a subdivision. And as the applicant said, the actual planning matter is whether allowing this is going to be deemed as unplanned rural residential development. Now, the council has set a 24 hectare minimum lot size. And that's thinking not just about the use now, but when that property is sold into the future, that is what the council has established at the moment as the minimum viable lot size in the RU1 zone for agricultural use to meet the objectives of the zone. So we're not really concerned about the location of the dwelling. That's an issue other than there's some comments around its location in terms of setback, but pretty much where they want to put it is absolutely fine, but it needs to be on a lot of 24 hectares to comply with the LEP. And that means that at some time in the future, when that property changes ownership, then it be still that viable minimum agricultural use. Now, what the applicant can do, if they subdivide the 24 hectares as a boundary adjustment, essentially, is come to agreement with the rest of the property to use the productive land for the agricultural, and that's as a common practice that happens throughout the LGA.
I'd like to speak to my motion, Madam Mayor, and we'll get back to some procedure if you like.
Yes, Councillor Ingram, you're going to speak for it.
Thank you. And I'll just clarify a couple of things that we've already spoken about. It's a bit hard. I wasn't in the room, as you both know. Everyone knows the last two occasions, but I've read the reports, and I've read the applicant and his consultant's reports, and it keeps popping up. A reason to refuse this is you don't want to destroy productive land. Oh, whoops. It's exactly the opposite. By making them go to 24 hectares, you're destroying productive land as opposed to being done on a rocky patch that's non-productive. That goes through and through and through it. It's there, and that's part of the reasoning. So that's part of the reasoning that I disagree with. Doesn't meet the minimum lot size. Well, in a moment, we'll be going back to another matter. And just recently in town, we allowed variations of 70%. Just recently. In tonight's paper, there's another item we go back to where there's a variation being requested of 67%. And staff have recommended that we accept it. This variation that's been asked for in this matter is 62%. As I said, I'll go back to being just plain old common sense logical, but I'll have great difficulty with that. I've done the math, so it's correct. I just, for the life of me, the reasoning behind staff, and I understand they've got desktops and computers and they have to go through regulations. This is another case of a site visit and some constructive communication being dealt with where this allows the applicant to have the home for whoever, his daughter, whoever it might be, not interfere with his productive land, not interfere with anyone around him. And yes, the blocks over the road there, I know what size they are, as I said. That was me. So it's not as if it would be out of place at all. It looked very much at that's the wrong word, at home being there. So that is a concern, one. My other concern was the procedural matter of how it happened in the first place. In February 24, the resolution was that Council defer the matter for staff to add conditions of consent of approval for development application number blah, blah, blah. That came back to Council, not with any conditions of consent for approval, came back recommending non-approval. Two councillors were ill, were away. I was out in the hallway wondering what was going on because I thought it was pretty straightforward that night, but as it turned out, it wasn't. So the procedure that was done was incorrect to start with. It should have been rescinded. It wasn't. So you can't change back what happened then.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I must put on the record that I do not agree with that interpretation. The matter was deferred. Council staff stood by their professional opinion for the document. The conditions were brought back to Council as part of an attachment with the opportunity for the matter to be debated. It was put forward and the motion was lost on that basis, and then it was lost.
I'm sorry, Mr. General Manager.
This is a difference of opinion. I just wanted to put forward my point.
I want facts.
No, okay. Well, the fact from my point is I do not agree with your interpretation.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and that's your entitlement. I'll just read it one more time. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. That Council defer the matter for staff to add conditions of consent of approval for development application blah, blah, blah. Now, if Council staff didn't want to do that,
they did that.
Or feel that professionally they couldn't do that, they should have come back and rescinded. Excuse me, Madam Mayor. It could have been rescinded. That resolution needed to be rescinded if Council were going to bring back a recommendation to not comply. Anyway, I won't go on with that point any longer. I can see people getting a bit flustered.
Thank you, Councillor. I would just say I do not agree. The matter is deferred.
Completely. You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to just read the facts. So that's what happened. We go back to being what we're dealing with. There is any other number of examples where the variations have been met, and that was just mentioned as being one of the problems. So, as I said, we're about to go back and, on Council's staff's recommendation, approve a variance of 67%.
But we're dealing with this one at the moment.
That's right. Well, this is only 62. I'm going to make a comparison to put it into context for people to understand, Madam Mayor, like yourself. So you know what I'm trying to say. This is not a precedent. The precedent is set back in the paper when we go back to the other item. So I just think, councillors, that this whole thing was dealt with in a pretty ordinary way, and that's why I would like support for my motion to approve the development application. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Does anybody want to speak against it? Then I will speak against it. I have the utmost confidence in the work of the staff. I found their arguments cogent, and I also look at the documents that we have, which is the LEP. And are we going to support our LEP or are we going to undermine it? And in this case, and I know where the property is, there is no reason I have found that there has to be that variation. The house can be built and without, if you like, changing the requirements of the LEP. I'm also very aware that it is a state objective, if you like, to preserve and maintain prime agricultural land. I take into account the views that have been put forward that this isn't top agricultural land, but it has been grazed, and that is agricultural activity, which is very important. But my main concern too is this continuous undermining of our base documents on which we're basing the decisions for Hilltops. As I said before, I have confidence in the views of the experts that we employ. They certainly are bound by the rules and regulations, which they follow through, and they present the case to us for us to decide. And it will be our decision. But in speaking against this, I find no reason why the same development can't be made following the current rules of the LEP. Of course, we decide when things are brought to council on a case-by-case basis. If this property is sold in the future, it still means that there is that hectare base that is still counted as of use for agricultural production, which, if we make that variation, will disappear. And my concern on wider view is that this can happen all over our areas where agricultural land is. So for those reasons, I will vote against this resolution. Thank you. All right. Do we have...
Madam Mayor, with your indulgence... Are you
speaking for or against?
Well,
Flannery?
With your indulgence, I'm going to ask the mover, given that I was the seconder, I'm going to ask Councillor Ingram if I could have the response on the matter, because have there been two speakers for? I'd like to either speak for...
No, we've only had one speaker for, so you can speak for it.
Okay, well, look, I'd like to speak for it for some very simple reasons, that there's a process here. The staff have to look at the LEP and see does it meet the requirements of the LEP? And the staff have adjudged that it doesn't meet the requirements of the LEP, and so it's come before us. So in the notes that have gone forward that we as part of this resolution that we approve it, and then we have to give reasons back to the government as to why we approve it. Now, ultimately, the government will be the arbiter. They will look at our LEP and they'll look at the reasons we've put forward, and then they'll either accept or reject our decisions. But let's be clear about this. There's some very simple facts. We're giving them approval to build. If we were to vote this through, we would be giving them approval to build a house on a, whatever it is, 9.7 hectare lot, when the minimum lot size is 24 hectares. So we're presupposing that if that lot would be sold separately to the rest of the farm, someone then would be able to build a house on the balance of the farm or the other lots, or however they might choose to do it, and this 9 hectare lot would sit there under the ownership of the daughter or the son or whoever, and it would create a precedent. Well, I simply don't accept that, because the balance of the farm would be bigger. If we approve this, there'll be a bigger area left for farming than if we force them to build on a 24 hectare lot. And that is just a very simple mathematical equation. And if the government is so concerned about it, they will write back and say, we acknowledge your receipt, we do not accept your reasons. Now, as clever thinking people, we should vote in favour of this and allow the government to decide whether our reasons are sufficient for common sense to prevail.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I'd like to also foreshadow a motion that if this doesn't get up, that we return to the original motion.
There's no need to vote on that. It's just a foreshadow motion at this point.
I understand that. All right. Okay. We've had 2 speakers for, 1 against. Anybody else? If not, I will put it to the vote.
Not till I have my right to reply.
Pardon me. Pardon me. Councillor Ingram. Yes, we'll right of reply.
We'll remind you as we go along. It'll be fine. Okay. Just make some quick notes, Madam Mayor, on the reasons. You think you vote against this matter? You're really concerned about the LEP. I fail to take a lot of confidence in that, given that not very long ago, you voted wholeheartedly to rezone residential land into industrial land, completely against the LEP that we'd sent through, but had no trouble at all, contradicting the LEP in doing such, which I still struggle with. But anyway, it was done in a decision of council, and that's how it stands, and fair enough. So why you'd be so concerned about offending the LEP on a matter out the highway that has a variation of 62%, which is a lot less than others have been granted, you would seek to destroy more prime land by making it 24 hectares. You would be defeating the purpose of the argument the staff have put up. And just on that point, and you said confidence of staff, so have I, and staff have a job to do, and they have guidelines to go by, and they do that. That's why we're here as elected councillors, to agree with that, or in this particular case, not agree with it, and don't think the reasons that they put up are strong enough, and I definitely don't. Because by going the other way, you are destroying more land. And as for the future, there's only one thing I'm sure about the future, isn't it? One day we'll all be gone. So there's no guarantees of what might happen in the future, and Councillor Flannery touched on that point about what might happen if the property was sold. So, councillors, thank you for listening to my bashing about this matter, but it was just too many reasons for this councillor not to see this happen. So I would appreciate your support in approving the development application for the dwelling. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. If there are no more comments... Nobody's around? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion?
Councillor Ingram, Councillor Mackie, Councillor Flannery.
Those against?
Those against, Councillor Rolls, Councillor Hewson, Councillor Piper,
and
Councillor Dodd. Lost.
Okay, motion is lost. All right, so we'll go back to the foreshadowed motion, which is the original motion. Yes, I've moved it. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Okay. I'll speak first of all, since I moved it. As I said before, this has come before us before. I've voiced my concerns about the LEP. In the future, there is an opportunity, I know, to revise the LEP, but as it stands, that's been the decision of council. We've followed the right processes in bringing it before council for a variation, and I stand by the LEP of the 24 hectares. I understand that the dwelling house it will make on the 24 hectares, everything can go ahead, and also we're not eating into, if you like, the 24 hectare minimum lot size that we have at the moment. I think it's very important that we look at our founding documents, if you like, that we have. And of course, the fact that they're brought before council is part of our democratic process. But for this, I am going with the recommendation to refuse the development application. Do we have a speaker against?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I speak against. And I speak against the logic, again, of what you've just said. In regard to your biggest concern being about the LEP, when you clearly indicated very recently you had no respect for the LEP because you rezoned industrial land, residential land, into industrial land and never missed a beat. And now you wanted to stick to an LEP in regard to a 9 hectare paddock 15 kilometres from town. I just struggle to see the continuity there. And once again, I will read a resolution of council in February, resolution 24/08, that council defer the matter for staff to add conditions of consent of approval for development application number, blah, blah, blah. How you ever got in the room with a recommendation from council staff to refuse it and let that happen is beyond me and beyond a lot of other people that have been talking to me. I was in the hallway. The opportunity has been brought back to us tonight to rectify a wrong that isn't opinionated, it's factual. It's in writing in front of you. Councillors, I don't want to call anyone out, but to defy the facts that are written down in front of you, I think you do a disjustice to our community. I strongly oppose it being refused, and as was evident by the vote just a moment ago, I don't think anyone's going to change their opinion anytime shortly, but later on tonight in good conscience you might have a think about, or at least be able to explain your reasons for what you voted for. Thank you. And don't use offending the LEP as an excuse because you clearly don't worry about the LEP from your decision very recently. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Do we have any other speakers for? Any other against? If not, against?
I'd like to speak against. Look, I just find it unbelievable that those who didn't support this, the approval of this, cannot understand the logic of the process in that you are leaving a bigger area to farm. You are sending it off to, you would otherwise have sent it off to a government department for review, and now you refuse it because of some ideological reason that you have proven yourselves to be inconsistent with on other matters. If this landslide of applications for subdivisions can occur, why hasn't it occurred? I mean, in Harden and Boorowa, we have 40 hectare minimum lot sizes, and in Young, it's 180. Where is this landslide of evidence? It actually does not exist because farmers value their land. What they don't want to do is give hundreds of thousands of dollars away needlessly for someone to build a house on when they don't intend on working on that land. And then you actually insult the intelligence of the landowners. It is an absolute insult. How dare you?
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. We'll put it to the vote. All right. Those in favour of the recommendation? Those in favour?
Councillor Rolls, Councillor Foreman.
This is the original recommendation.
Motion, yes. Those against?
Those against?
Councillor Ingram, Councillor Mackey, Councillor Hayes, Councillor Piper, Councillor Flannery. Motion's lost.
Okay, motion's lost. So what do we do?
Given the motions have been put, staff will reflect upon that and come back to the way forward.
Because I listened to you and Councillor Flannery.
Thank you. Righto. All right. So the step forward is
Council staff. It's neither been approved nor refused, so we will take that on notice and bring back a further report at a future meeting.
okay. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Director.
The matter will have to be brought back to the next council meeting, I presume, Mr. General
In
Manager.
August?
Yes.
In August.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, just to remind councillors, there is a clause recently that should any development application not be considered, the principle is that no DAs be considered during the caretaker period. However, there is the relevant clause that says that should not bringing it to a council during the caretaker period would be deemed refusal, it is allowed to be considered during the caretaker mode. So it'll be our intent to bring back what we need to bring back.
All
right. So, Councillor,
Director?
Yep, I mean, that's probably the case. I just wanted to say that given that you've resolved to already refuse it, we'll just need to check whether the proviso that it's in the deemed refusal period actually plays out, given you've already made a resolution to refuse it. So I just need to signal that we need to get advice on that. That's all I just want to say.
If that's the case, there's two resolutions to take advice on. The one that says add conditions of consent of approval.
Yep.
So don't let that get in our way. So, bring it back to August. Thank you.
We have, look, and certainly if there is any concerns that we do that, take it upon us to bring it back before the 14th, the 17th of August, which is when you go into caretaker mode. I'd have to call an extraordinary meeting if that was the case, because it's important. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that advice, General Manager. Appreciate it.
Okay. The time is, and you're going to hate me for saying this, it is now 7 o'clock. We've had a fair struggle to get this far, and I think it would do us all good to have a short break, a 10-minute break, so that we can really get in and get through this. I'll put it to the meeting. Those in favour? Three, four. Those against?
Councillor Piper. It's 4-4, Madam Mayor.
Well, it's 4-4. I will cast my vote that we will have 10-minute break.
Last we have 10-minute break.
Since one councillor at least has gone. Okay.
Question through you, Madam Mayor, question Director. It basically tells us that the investigation has been undertaken. And I asked at the previous council meeting for a report that also detailed what the impact would be on the I guess, fauna and flora along the rail corridor, and whether the transmission line easement was an option. I was told it wasn't, but it simply says the environmental investigation assessment's being undertaken. There's no detail here in the detail of that, what report's been undertaken by who, and if there's any recommendations or findings.
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so that's correct. While those studies have been done, or those investigations have been done, we don't yet have a document that's suitable for publication, and as soon as we do, we'll provide that.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
So when will that be provided to council before further steps are taken, or what will the process be with all this investigative work, and in particular the various investigations?
So the process, as set out in the report, further work's being done in August, and following that further work, we can provide a comprehensive report to council.
Right, so we're looking at next
October. Yeah.
October.
So what?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So what's here is incorrect. We won't have a final report in August.
Well, so the report will have been provided to council staff, but as there's no council meeting, we can't. It'll be provided to council staff, by the end of August. If that's early enough to provide it to a council meeting in August, that's what we'll do, but it's more likely that the next council meeting will be in October.
Okay, and that report will contain where it's going, how much it's going to cost, the lot.
Yes.
Thank you.
So just through you, Madam Mayor, given that we waxed lyrical about the need for council to understand the financial impact of the rail trail, and now, as I read this, it's almost a fait accompli that we will be compiling the report and putting an application in for funding. Wouldn't it be a worthwhile process that the documents come back for council to consider in the next steps?
Through you, Madam Mayor. My understanding is, at this point in time, we've been, I would call it the penultimate report, which is the update of the report of which the acting director has spoken. There needs to be then a further report that would, depending on its cost, potentially would require a budget approval before council. We'd most likely report it to council in any way, the quantum of the cost to do the detailed design. Once that is there, then it is, for all intents and purposes, as I understand it, shovel ready, but that is no decision as into whether council then apply. It is still then up to the council, the elected officials, on what is applied for, given the questions on who will own the pipeline, what is its depreciate, all the costs involved with it. That is information that we are yet to have and yet to provide to you before you make the decision on whether to proceed for it. So it's certainly not a fait accompli. It is just we are working towards a point in time where you can make a decision on whether or not we apply or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
How much money do we have left in the budget? Because we received, 890,000 or thereabouts for this study. Presumably, has all that money been expended, or will we be utilising part of that for completion of this report and follow-up action?
So through you, Madam Mayor, the budget allows for the completion of the final components noted in this report, plus we're not expecting to use the contingency which was allowed, which is the proportion of the funding that the department is considering whether it can be used for detailed design.
Okay, so you're well within budget by the sounds of things.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, as part of the next report, can we get, it may well be here, but it is, I've missed it, but what funding's left in this bucket for the next council meeting? We should be able to do that for the next council meeting.
Yes, we can do that, noting that by the time of the August meeting, we may not have expended all the required funds to complete those reports due in August.
But you'll have an idea.
Yes, we will.
Okay. Righto. All right. Thank you. If there are no further questions, comments, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We turn now to 1217, the Integrated Water Cycle Management Strategy. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. And the seconder, Councillor Mackie. Okay. If there are no questions, Councillor Ingram.
I'll just make a comment that, Madam Mayor, while I move to the item, it's a matter that I discussed when it first came out with some flawed numbers in it. So it's very hard to have a lot of confidence. I know it's part of the routine that council has to go through. It's a very aspirational document. I like that word. And hopefully their aspirations can be met one day. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. If there's no further comments, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. All right, we'll turn to 1218. That's the GUGIONG water main upgrades funding reallocation, and the recommendation is before us. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. And a seconder? Councillor Ingram. Right. Any queries, questions? If not, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We're going to 1219, and we're on 673. 1219, the Thornhill Street project update. The recommendation is there. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. You're doing a sterling job tonight.
As always.
If there are no queries, questions with the reallocation, everybody's happy with it? Worked out well? It did. Okay. If there are no queries, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We'll go now up to 1220, and that's the Burley Griffin Speed Zone Review. And the recommendation is to receive and note the report. Councillor Flannery?
I've just lost my page. Sorry, 675.
I thought you'd have
1220.
I thought you'd have a marker on this, Councillor Flannery.
No, the break upset me. I lost my place. Move on in a second.
No, we haven't. We were waiting. I thought your hand was up for a mover. Would you like to move it, Councillor Flannery?
I certainly want to speak against it.
We'll move it, and I'll second it.
So are you moving?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay, and Councillor Ingram, you're seconding it. Okay. And Councillor Flannery, I presume you have some comments.
Well, I don't accept the report, and I don't accept the RMS's inconsistent application of speed zones. And again, I point to the fact that there's, in my view, it's actually a dangerous changeover. We've now got, not only does it go to the Wombat Road intersection, it goes way over the hill and picks up the overtaking lane, even entering Harden. I mean, I struggle to see how council can just receive and note this report. I think we should again write back to them and ask for a review. Heading eastbound from the west, the 80 zone starts over near Hangman's Bridge, and it's just, there is one road off to the right, but you have got now road right through to Wallenbean with no overtaking lanes where you can reasonably get past a truck, and then very limited opportunities right through to Stock and Bingle.
So, Councillor Flannery, you've moved the motion. Are you adding a B that you're just to make sure I get instruction if need be? You're asking us to approach the potentially the local traffic committee, but
Council seek a review of the extension such that it's limited to the bottom of the overtaking lane. The extension is limited to the bottom of the overtaking lane or the beginning of the overtaking lane at Murrumbara.
We're just having the minute, Secretary. Those words, you can see that. Can you see that, Councillor Flannery?
Let's get it up. Yes, I'm happy with that.
Councillor Ingram, are you happy with that amendment?
I might have to study it for a while. I concur.
Okay, you concur. So therefore it becomes the motion before you, councillors.
It's typical when you're in a good mood.
Yeah. All right. We have it in front of us. And that is motion at the moment. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Yeah. Against? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. All right, the ARRB Road Condition Survey and Report. Recommendation is there. Do I have a mover?
Happy to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. And a seconder, Councillor Foreman. All right. Councillor Ingram, you want to make a comment?
Comment, Madam Mayor, in regard to the report. It was very contentious when it started. A lot of graphs and a lot of information, which is still a bit far away from my practicality work. But one item I was really pleased to see that someone actually agreed with me that Thornhill Street is a high priority in need of expenditure. So I was very pleased to see that. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. If there's no further... Councillor Flannery.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just a question as to, I've actually got it on the report, but can I get confirmation that my recollection is we were told the report was back to council late last year and it was being reviewed, which doesn't match the dates on page 689.
Okay. No, I've got the report starting at 683. The dates.
On the version control, in the asset management meetings, we were told that council, and I don't have the dates in front of me, but council had drafts of the report but was still finalising details.
Yes, so through you, Madam Mayor, I believe that's the version. The dates on the version control page in the report refer to the written report itself. I understand what council had at the time that Councillor Flannery is referring to would have been the outputs of the model rather than the report itself.
Okay, so this is the whole report as...
Yes,
okay,
that's what that table reflects, yes.
Okay, righto. Thank you for that. All right, no more questions of that. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We'll turn to 1222, and that's the Regional Road Block Grant. 1222. their recommendation is there. Everybody got the page? Page
724.
724. I'm just waiting. Councillor Hewson, yeah, it's 724. Yes, okay. Councillor Ingram, thank you for moving it. And seconded.
I'll do it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. All right. Okay. The recommendation is there. Councillor Ingram first.
Councillor Flannery, I'll be quick. Yeah, the only thing that I'd ask on this, and I think I mentioned it maybe at the workshop, is I do have a bit of a problem with spending money on guardrails. My take on it, the money is probably better off, in my humble opinion, being spent on the road, so we don't have to be too concerned about the guardrail. If the road's in good condition, just as I said, my thoughts, I think if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. I'm sure there's a reason why it's come to council like that, but I do honestly believe that, in my opinion, that I'd rather see the money spent on the roads than guardrails. Thank you.
Director, Acting Director, have you got a comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for your comments. The guardrail areas that are proposed, you'll note there are two sections on bridges or bridge abutments, and further sections on Jugiong Road. The reason why we would use guardrail in those sections is because it's not practicable to widen the road further to achieve the same safety result.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The second item for Boorowa is the Rye Park Road guardrail, Hardman Street. Hardman Street's the street that the IGA and that's in, and it doesn't go to Rye Park. It comes to a dead end on Long Street.
So I think you're correct. It's not the road to Rye Park. It is Pudman Street. It's the bridge over the creek in town there. Over Ryan's Creek.
Had the accident there a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Councillor
Flannery.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just so we're clear that we're voting to A, receive and note the report, and B, adopt the proposed projects in Table 1 of this report. And Table 1 is on 727, which has the funding allocations.
Councillor Flannery, it's on the page 724. It's at the bottom. It's on the same page of the title of report.
The next report's wrong. That's what you indicated.
Not in the copy I've got.
1222. You're on the right page now.
1222 is the report. Report 24/203 Regional Roads Block Grant 2425. Table funding allocation. On page, your page would be 272.
Yeah, okay, I was on the. Thank you.
Okay.
My question, well, in hind, now that I'm on the right page, how is it that Harden and Boorowa get an equal allocation?
Councillor, you resolved at the 26th of June 2024 ordinary council meeting. Council resolved to allocate 555.
There you go. Right, thank you. Thank you.
Any assistance, Councillor Flannery? I asked the same question.
Righto. All right. If there are no more questions, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We'll turn to 1223. That's the roads to recovery.
Happy to move with no little correction.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. And seconder?
I'll do it again.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. Councillor Ingram.
Recommendation of Councillor ARRB to adopt.
I can't hear. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor, I had my speaker on. I just moved the roads to recovery item with a correction into the recommendation where it says adopt the proposed projects in Table 1. It should read in Table 3 of this report. because table 1 is the announcement of the funding, then the amounts. The actual report table that we'll be adopting will be table 3.
That's correct. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
Thank you, Acting Director.
Thank you. All right.
So on that note, I'm happy to speak for the recommendation. Again, thanks staff for the work that's gone into it. From the original sheet, there's been some adjustments made and some changes which have been supported by the earlier item in the road report. And the one question I would have in regard to it is down the bottom with HARDEN and money being allocated for gravel reshooting when we have a gravel reshooting program for that work to be done. I'm just wondering, no doubt there's a reason, so I'd just like to ask the Acting Director why money's been allocated for gravel reshooting out of this funding.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, for the question. The reason for that allocation towards gravel resheeting is that the gravel resheeting budget is insufficient for this year for the work that is required on the unsealed roads, whereas the sealed road network in HARDEN is in relatively good condition.
Thank you.
Okay, it's reasonable. All right, Councillor.
Three here, Madam Mayor. Just what is the time frame that this money will be spent? Because I might be confident that, well, firstly, where's the gravel coming from? Is this simply for the gravel, or is this for the entire? My first question was, is this for the gravel only, or is this for the whole program, as in grading, repairing, and so on? I assume it's for the extent of the work, not. And secondly, where's the gravel coming from?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the allocation here is, as I said, in addition to the gravel resheeting budget, or the proposed allocation, I should say. So it doesn't necessarily reflect the total amount that would be spent on those gravel roads. And the gravel would be sourced from our own quarries where possible.
Okay, thank you.
As long as we don't get GALONG gravel on any of these roads, it'll be a complete and utter waste of money in summer storms. It just washes away in the HARDEN Shire.
Okay, I'm sure you'll take note of that. All right, if there's no more, can't talk. There are no more questions or queries. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We'll turn to 1224, the Annual Capital Works Report for 2023-24. The report is here. The recommendation is in front of us. Do I have a mover? Thank you. Just keep your arm up. Thank you, Councillor Hewson. And was that a mover or a seconder? That was a seconder, and Councillor Ingram the mover. Righto. Any questions? If not, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We've got moving through it. All right. And 1225, the works report. Recommendation is there. Maybe we can have another mover. Councillor Mackie, good on you. Councillor Mackie, and a seconder, Councillor Hewson. All right. If there are no questions, queries, Councillor Flannery.
Just a question, and it relates particularly to Campbellfields Road, which I don't travel. I travel reasonably frequently. There's been extensive work done there, and I thank staff for it, because I had a lot of complaints or notifications from ratepayers there. However, in the rain that we had following the work, there was considerable pooling of water along the edges of the road. And if I could request that council staff, when we get wet weather, jump in their utes, those who are responsible for the grading, jump in the utes, particularly where work's been recently performed, and go and see what's been done, and how long it'll last. Because when I look at Campbellfields Road there, the next grade is due in March 2025, and I can tell you it won't last that long, and we'll have spent all that money, and there were problems arising within 10 days to 2 weeks of the work that was done because some bevel drains or some drains just weren't adequately cleaned out. There was grass left lying, and I restate, they did a very good job, but it just needs a little bit more attention, and it's often the case to get all the water off the road because we haven't had big storm events. They've only been 10 to 15 mils, and yet there's been considerable pooling along the edge of those roads.
Okay, thank you. Two together, Councillor Foreman and then Councillor Ingram.
At the GALONG meeting last week, there was mention of Ryan Street, and I did look for it. Just is in a bad condition. They didn't really mention what it was, but they said it was terrible. And I've
spoken to staff about that.
Well, okay. So
and I'm advised that given they've got funds in the VPA money, they can address it.
Okay. And another thing, do we have, like I went on a walk a couple of weeks ago just up and down the main street of Young, Boral Street. Do we have the ability to clean the footpaths of the moss and like the dirt that's collected on the footpath in the main street?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we do have the ability. Main streets are cleaned of that sort of debris and bird poo and other issues with water jets, essentially.
Yeah, well, I guess it was just like there was quite a few spots where it was mouldy and there was sort of stained, and I actually had a good look at it. I was like, it's actually really quite like dirty looking. I won't say grubby, but grubby. So I just thought, do we have the means to actually go up onto the footpath? I do note that it was where the awnings were dripping water. There was a lot of mold, particularly around the Eastern Hotel and things like that, and in other darker, but I thought it's also a bit of a slip hazard, I thought. And then leading into that, and this isn't probably in this section, but I'll mention it, also, do we look into the awnings and what disrepair that they are in? Because I did look at the East, I'm just using them as an example, but there is a gaping hole in it. It doesn't look that, and then all the water's running down and it's creating the moss. So I just wondered if we ever looked into the conditions of the awnings and I suppose throughout Hilltops, just of the condition, considering people are walking all day long. I just wondered. Thank you.
It's a safety issue. We need to look at
Yeah.
Director of Planning.
So through you, Madam Mayor, yes, indeed, we do irregular inspections and we do follow up on complaints when we receive them, and definitely there are properties in Harden that we are working with the property owner to achieve compliance for safety reasons.
Yes, it would be good if we did have a look into that, because there are some quite undesirable awnings. Thank you.
Okay, there are no more questions?
Yes, there
is. Yes, Councillor.
Through you, Madam Mayor. First question is, how many graders do we own presently? Acting Director.
8.
So we own 8 graders. The next question is, have you got any idea, and it might be a bit hard, this question, to know if they've all been fully utilised or some lying around doing nothing?
My understanding is that they are all fully utilised. Previously, we had 9, I believe, prior to the retirement of one model. At that stage, that 9th model was used as a backup, and since then they are fully utilised.
So we have 8 qualified grader drivers.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, that's your understanding, righto. That's good, because it's been well reported for the last couple of years, gravel roads, and as Councillor Flannery just touched on, things happen and you can't get back to them when they're programmed for 10 months later. That's a bit too late. So I think we need to keep a close check on our gravel roads. A couple I'd mention here is I see and I spoke to the acting director. I'll mention in regard to Highbank Lane being nearly undrivable, and I presume it's been looked at, but because it's down here for February 25, people can't get up and down it now. So I presume, hope, staff have had a look at that since I reported that. It definitely won't last to February 25. It needs to be addressed sooner. And in regard to the rest of the dates that are in here, for example, July/August, are we on target?
I believe we have had some delays due to weather, but we are largely on target.
Okay, we'll keep that interested watch on that. Just to let you know, to keep you on your toes, that because it is a concern to the ratepayers, and because of those weather events, the conditions of our gravel road network. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Question
Councillor.
for you, Madam
Question,
Mayor.
Councillor Parker.
We have 8 graders. Are they housed? Where are they housed, or do they go where they're needed for the urgent work?
So through you, Madam Mayor, we have 4 based in Young and 2 based in each of Harden and BOOROWA, and they work where they're needed.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for your answers. There are no more.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, given I sent an email or correspondence to the General Manager, and I've just checked that perhaps one of the reasons in relation to Garrett Road, perhaps one of the reasons that it's in a state of disrepair is I can't find it on the schedule of works that are required. Oh, yes, it is. Sorry, my apologies. August 24. Could the director or acting director please advise what work you were able to carry out on Garrett Road? And I thank staff for their assistance in the matter.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so following your advice, we have started work on Garrett Road today, grading, and gravel will be delivered from tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, one more question. Just for curiosity's sake, it's got here started putting up CCTV signage at village waste facilities. Does that mean that we've put cameras back in there? Is that what that is?
Yes, that's correct. So signage needs to be in place before we can use the footage.
Okay, to say that it's there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And do we feel it's secure this time around? Because I know that in the past has been mentioned that the cameras and things get destroyed and so on.
Yeah. So in the past we have lost temporary cameras. So the sorts of cameras that you'd use for tracking animals when you're hunting, that sort of thing, because they have to be in a place where we can physically put them without working from heights. The cameras that will be in place shortly are fixed cameras mounted so that they're out of reach.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director, for your answers. If there's no more concerns, Councillor Flannery, was your hand up or not? No? Okay, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Next one is correspondence for information, 1226. So moved. Thank you, Councillor Foreman, and seconded by Councillor Mackie. No queries, questions. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Where are we up to? 1227? Is that right? The GALONG limestone mine VPA. And the resolution is in front of you. Receive and note the report. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Foreman and Councillor Piper. There are no queries. I'll put to vote. Okay, Councillor Dodge, your hand up? Yep. Yes, okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Where are we going? The action 1229?
1228,
Oh, pardon me. Here we go. Yep. Friends of Galong Cemetery, 1228. Recommendation, receive and note the report. Okay, thank you, Councillor Foreman. And seconded, Councillor Ingram. Okay, if there are no questions, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Now we're up to 1229, the action summary report. And the recommendation to note the status of the action plan. I have a mover. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. All right. Okay. I did look around the room. All right. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And then we get to 13.1, questions with notice. These were the questions. Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Councillor Mackie. They're there. Replies. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move to notice of motion. And Councillor Ingram. We have here the motion. I'll put it in front of you. Councillor Ingram, you're moving it.
Thank you very much.
And have you got a seconder before we Councillor Foreman? There you go. Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, this has been pointed out as a matter that has been going on for some time now, and the contribution plan, as it was in 2016, has run its dates. It's outdated, it's colluded and complicated, and it doesn't really achieve what needs to be achieved. So I'd ask you for your support in my motion that we repeal it and change it, and there'll be two benefits out of it. First benefit will be to staff. It will make the process more efficient and let's say the word uncomplicated for staff to deal with, and it will be financially beneficial to council. So on that two notes, I'd ask for support with my notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ingram. Councillor Flannery. Oh.
I'm happy to second it.
Oh, well, I think it's been seconded. So
okay,
no more questions, queries. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. All right. We're moving into close. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Ingram and Councillor Mackie, for a change. Those in favour? Yes, unanimous. Thank you. We are now in close.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. During closed session, Council resolved the following at 15.2.24.214 proposal to reopen Harden hydrotherapy pool. It was recommended that Council A delegate authority to the General Manager to negotiate operating conditions and, once satisfied, execute an agreement with Harden Physiotherapy for the operation and maintenance of the Harden hydrotherapy pool. Council resolved at 15.3-24/215 contract for the management of Young Aquatic Centre. That Council receive and note the report on the contract of the management of Young Aquatic Centre. Council at 15.4-24/216 proposal to acquire land for the purpose of construction of the proposed Wituna Rural Fire Service Facility. Hopefully I've said that correctly. Council resolved that A, supports the acquisition of an area of 888.3 metres squared, being part of Lot 1 DP 876125 for the Peppercorn Sum for the purpose of constructing a rural fire service facility on the site. B, should the subject land not be available for acquisition, that Council approves the long-term lease of the site for a Peppercorn Sum. C, authorises the General Manager to negotiate commercial terms for a Peppercorn amount for the transfer or long-term lease of the land to council and to complete documentation to enable transfer or lease of the land, and D, upon acquisition, the land remains vested in council as operational land. At 15.5-24/217- water supply, council resolved to A, receive and note the report, B, consult with the Bribberry Water and Progress Association on possible transfer of the scheme to council and conduct appropriate investigations into the feasibility of this, including inspection surveys and review of the association's documents, and C, instruct the general manager to provide a report on B to council within 6 months of the election in September 2024. 15.6-24/218 Bald Hill Regional Landfill Leachate Barrier Update. Council resolved to receive and note the report, B, in accordance with section 55(3)(1) of the Local Government Act 1993, delegate authority to the General Manager to negotiate with and enter into a contract with the Bald Hill Quarry Proprietary Limited, trading as Ecofill, for the installation of the leachate barrier, if and to the extent such a contract is reasonably necessary, and C, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute documentation associated with awarding this contract. 15.7-24/219 award of contract RFT 17 Waste and Recyclables Collection Services. Council resolved to A, receive and note the report on RFT 17 Waste and Recyclables Collection Services. B, option 2, award the contract RFT 17 Waste and Recyclables Collection Services to the successful tenderer for a period of 10 years, and C, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation associated with this contract and expend funds as required within current budgets. Council also resolved at 15.8-24/220 award of contract RFT 29 Harden Sewer Treatment Plant Pond Remediation. Council resolved to A, receive and note the report on RFT 29 Harden STP Pond Remediation. B, award contract RFT 29 Harden STP Pond Remediation to the successful tenderer. And C, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation associated with this contract and expend funds as required within current budgets. Report 15.9-24/221 award of contract RFT 30 Waste Ejector Trailer Haulage for the South West Regional Waste Management Group. Council resolved that A, receive and note the report on RFT 30 Waste Ejector Trailer Haulage for the South West Regional Waste Management Group. B, decline all tenders and enter into negotiations with any person, whether or not the person was a tenderer, with a view to entering into a contract for waste ejector trailer haulage for the South West Regional Waste Management Group in accordance with Clause 178(3)(e) of the Local Government General Regulations 2021 due to the inadequate insurance coverage and limited market response. And C, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation extension options associated with this contract and expend funds as required within current budgets. Report 1510-24/222 award of contract RFT 31 Burragong Creek Bridge Construction. Council resolved A, receive and note the report on RFT 31 Burragong Creek Bridge Construction. B, decline all tenders for RFT 31 Burragong Creek Bridge Construction. C, enter into negotiations with the preferred tenderer in accordance with 178(3)(e) of the Local Government General Regulations 2021 to revisit the scope of the works for RFT 31 Burragong Creek Bridge Construction to align with the available budget allocation with a review of entering into a contract, and D, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation associated with the awarding of this contract and expend funds as required within current budgets. Report 1511-24/223 General Manager Performance Agreement - Annual Review of Performance for the 2023/24 review period. Council resolved A, note the outcomes of the annual review for the performance of the General Manager, Anthony, and B,
be congratulated on achieving many results for which the Council and Hilltops community can be proud.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Thank you, councillors. And I will close this meeting at
8:59. 8:59.
8:59. Thank you, councillors.